Fantastic. Okay. And I think I've got a thumbs up from an iPhone down there as well. There we go. Yes, we have indeed. Got a thumbs up in the chat box from the iPhone. Fabulous. Okay. So the first thing is just to give you an idea or an explanation as to what Thatcham is, where the times have come from. Going through the back side of like the 1960s, when an engineer from an insurance company go into a repairer to try to negotiate costs and methods of repairs, and it wasn't really methods, it was just costs. There generally was large variances going from one repairer to another repairer to try and negotiate what would be deemed to be a reasonable cost for that type of work. So as a means of trying to establish some type of baseline, the insurance companies all got together and they created something called Thatcham. So is anybody on this call that isn't from the UK? So if you're not from the UK, put your thumbs up. Cool, that'll do for me. Well, unless iPhone's not from the UK. So have you all heard of Thatcham? Superb. So Thatcham is funded by the insurance industry. So if you want to become a member of Thatcham, you can't. Because the only way you can become a member of Thatcham is, if you want to be on the board or anything like that, is by being an insurance company member. And what Thatcham did through the funding of it was they wanted to basically set some base times on different tasks repairing vehicles. Now, to do that, what they then did was they created a research facility. They would go to manufacturers, they'd ask for a brand new car, and they would then strip that vehicle down and put it together again and paint it. So these times that we'll go through tonight, they're not to be used for insurance purposes because, first of all, they're at least 30-year-old, but it's to give you a general idea. The second part of it is they're not to be used for insurance purposes because they're 30-year-old, but it should give you a rough idea in terms of generic times for different things. Now, what Thatcham did, in fact, let me just flick out of Facebook so it doesn't ping, if Fraser was sending a message there or something. What they did was they basically, all the times that they generated were on brand new cars. So there's a lot of things within the estimating cost that a repairer that might not have been taken into consideration because they weren't working on damaged cars. So that's the first thing that you need to be thinking of when you're doing an estimate. So the times that you do as a generic estimate doesn't take into consideration the fact that you might need to access a panel to investigate further. It could be the panel's crashed in or damaged in, and if you're removing it and refitting it, you might not be able to access the nuts and bolts that retain it. So there is different allowances that you need to bear in mind when compiling an estimate. In creating these different times, what they then did was, within the research they carried out, like I said, they'd strip every car down and put it together again. And the old ways of doing things pretty much was all based on cellulose paints. As technology changed and times changed, they then incorporated in clear over base paints and 2-stage and 3-stage pearls, basically. So is there anybody on here who still paints in solid paints? Fantastic, we can cut that side out and I can go through the pages then. So the only things I'm looking at going through then will be on clear over base paints in times relating to metallic pearls. And again, we'll only briefly go on to that. Now, in terms of the generic times of what you would have for vehicles and where Thatcham was generating times, when I first started off as an engineer, so to give you a brief idea of my background, I used to be a mechanic rather than be working in a body shop, but I went from being a mechanic into being an engineer assessing vehicles for insurance companies. I worked for an accident management company where nobody had any knowledge at all whatsoever of compiling estimates or doing engineering. So I used my technical knowledge to assist on that, and I then worked as an independent engineer on that on the road. Now, when I got this job working as an independent engineer, nobody at any point had ever trained me, ever, point blank. So I'd seen Thatcham books, but I'd never been sure how to use them. I knew what Auditing was when it first came out, and this is going back 25 years, as a rough idea. So I knew how to get around Auditing, but again, I'd never compiled an estimate. So when I went out as an independent engineer, they basically give me a company car and a mobile phone. I went, off you pop, there you go. So these things that I'm just going to go through tonight is how I learned how to do a generic estimate. So I taught myself. Now, as I taught myself, I then learned different things that would help me become better at doing what you can do as an estimator. Now, the other side of it is the thing to bear in mind. Like I said, I'm doing the most basic part of this training for you tonight on the estimating side of it. From my background, skills and knowledge, estimating isn't my forte. When I worked for insurance companies, all I did was total loss vehicles. So I didn't build estimates. I could strip an estimate apart and pull out holes in it, but primarily I didn't authorize jobs working for insurance companies. All I basically did was get total losses, look at the estimate, it's in the bin, do that. So I am by no means an expert in compiling estimates, but I can certainly go up to a vehicle and do a fairly accurate one. James, however, and Mark are both experts in compiling estimates. So hence the reason why I'm going to do a bit further on the basics of it. And then later on through the session, I might do a little bit of Mark, but certainly with James, we'll cover a lot further for you. So are we all okay so far? If you give me a thumbs up. Okay.
Yeah.
So within the compilation of an estimate, Thatcham, what they then did was, rather than saying this cost this amount of money to do it, what they did was they broke the estimating process down into 3 separate parts. So the parts they separated it down to was MET, which is mechanical, electrical and trim. So these are the things that are actually fitted to the panel of the vehicle, or the electrics inside, or a loom or something like that. So basically anything that's clipped to or bolted to a panel that you might need to remove as part of the process of repairing it or painting it. The panel time was the actual time to remove and refit that panel, whether it be a wing, door skin, bonnet, anything else. This is the physical time. So if it's a welded on panel, to remove that panel from the vehicle by way of either drilling the welds out, splitting seam off it, or, you know, literally removing and refitting it, that is it. The other part of panel time is in terms of when you've got a panel that's damaged that you need to physically repair yourself, and you want to have an opinion in terms of how long it should take to repair that panel. So not necessarily removing and refitting, just physically repairing it. That would then go down against your panel time. Now, within the guides you've got as well, there is a guide from Thatcham where, based on the size of the repair, should give you an approximation. So it's not a definite, this is what it takes. It should give you an approximation of roughly the amount of time you might expect to put down on a panel to repair it based on the size of it. Now, aside from the actual size of the panel and looking at what you might think is a time to put against it, the way Thatcham works is it works on something called decimeters squared. So who knows what a decimeter is? Put your thumbs up if you say yes, no if you don't.
No.
Okay. So a decimeter, basically, if you had 1 decimeter squared, it's 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter. And at which point, oh, actually, no, sorry, 4 by, go on. 5 by 5. 2 hands swirling in the page. Just unmute yourself, James, go on.
Yeah, it's 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters.
Thank you. Yeah. So that's a decimeter squared, 10 by 10. Sorry, James, thank you. So when you see DCM with the 2 on the side of it, on the stuff we're going to go through, that means decimeters squared. So that is a decimeter squared that James has got there.
Over here.
Oh, is that right? Okay. So that's a decimeter squared. Now, do you all have paper and pens? Okay, fantastic. Now, to give you a general idea, like I said, the things we're going to go through tonight, what I've done is I've scanned, and I wish I'd known this sooner. I've scanned this book, so I've scanned every single page of it, and that's what we're going to flip through tonight. And the reason why I say I wish I'd known this earlier, because very kindly, James has got a better book that's larger, that's a PDF that's clearer, which probably would have saved me a day of fucking photocopying. Oh, I forgot I'm recording. So there we go. Now, what you've got when you're looking at the times to compile an estimate, I'm going to start screen sharing in a second, is that depending on what it is you're looking at as damage, so whether it's a front wing, a door, a rear door, a rear quarter. Then the times that Thatcham would give, and this is the times also I'd use as generic time, it will give you time for that one panel. So within one panel, say for example, it was damaged to a front wing and you're replacing it, it's a bolted on panel, and will look probably like an older vehicle rather than having to move and refit bumpers and stuff. We're just looking literally at a wing and make it easy. Then it would give you the time to do the MET, to take the things off, on and off it. It'd give you the time for the panel to move and refit the panel. And it'd give you time to prepare that panel by putting an etch coat on it, primer, base coat, and clear over base, because that's what we'll look at the clear over base stuff tonight. So within that, it gives you the amount of time to physically do the job. Now, within that time, all that's done is tell you how much time it takes to remove and refit that panel and paint it. That's it. It's not give you any times to blend it. It's not give you any times to move around the workshop. It's not give you time to go to the parts department to get the panel. And it's not give you any time to put any cavity wax on it. So all of these things are different allowances. Now, if you've got a job then where you're doing more than one panel, the allowances change because you're doing more than one, a semi game for 2 and 3 and 4 or whatever. Okay. So there are generic times that Thatcham give that you can do on every single job. So if you want to make a note of these times, this then is, again, so things might have changed. These times are 30-year-old, but they should still be thereabouts. Okay. A job allowance is the time it takes to find the part and do your checks and things like that and just move it around the workshop. So for one panel, Thatcham allows 0.3 of an hour. Now, all the times that we'll go through, they're all basically metric hours. So we're not going to use a normal system that we use now in terms of 60 minutes to 1 hour. These are all, it'll be 0.1, 0.2, 0.3 up to 0.10. And 0.10 is the second hour, basically. So the first job allowance is 0.3 for a single panel. If it was more than one panel, it's 0.5. So you'd be sticking this on every single job. Now, say, for example, a part is catching this front wing, it's caught the front wheel, and it needs a geometry. Thatcham would give 0.8 of an hour for a 2-wheel alignment. Now, should it need a 4-wheel alignment, it would generally give 1.2. Now, should a vehicle need to go on a jig, and you're doing a measurement on it, if the jig is a bracketless system, it would give 2.8 hours. And if it was a bracket jig, it would give 3.2. And then on top of that, you'd have normally an hour's pull just to kind of see where things are on it. So that'd be, if I was an engineer working in an insurance company, looking at a Thatcham-based estimate, those are the things that I'd expect to see. Now, in terms of these different panels, and you've got your job allowance, and you've got your wheel alignment, and you've got your jig, what you then find is that, again, in general, because it is dependent on the size of the panel that you're doing it, so it will change. So one thing that I did want to do, but I haven't got access to, was to look at a small vehicle, a medium vehicle, and a large vehicle, and a van. I've got something approximate to that, which will give you more accurate times. But what I would say to all of you is that the best thing you need to do, more than anything else, is get yourself an estimating system, because if you're repairing cars, you need to know how much it costs to, you know, what you're going to charge out. So every repairer that doesn't have an estimating system, it just makes my head go funny, because it's like going into a restaurant and not knowing how much it's going to cost by the time you get to the end of it. So, and that's a good way of thinking about it. Imagine being a restaurant owner and then selling all your food, and you've got people coming in, and then as a restaurant owner, you're going on to a forum about restaurant owners and then asking the other restaurant owners, how much would you charge for a steak? And that's what it's like when you're looking at a painters forum from like a position and say, for example, mine, James and Mark as engineers, but you're looking at some seeing people saying, how much do I charge for this? But You guys are physically repairing the vehicles. You need to understand what the value of your labour is, the cost of what your materials is, your profit margin on your paint materials and profit margin on your parts, and that should ultimately, multiplied by the time it takes you to do it, tell you how much it costs. So I find that's why this is what's created this, because I just find it a bit mind-boggling seeing comments of how much should I charge for this. So hopefully this should kind of help on that. So just as a thumbs up, who of you on here know what your labour rate is for a charge out rate? Just give me a thumbs up if you do, thumbs down if you don't. Right, Oliver, okay. Malcolm, you should do, you should be well polished, Malcolm. So Oliver, you don't. Kerry, did you say yes or no? Yes, you do. Ryan, are you a yes or a no? If I can't see or hear you. And then who's on the iPhone?
It's called Ben.
Ben. So Ben, so do you know what your charge out rate is?
No.
Right, okay. So do you just work from home then, Ben, or do you work from a workshop?
I've only got a garage here at the house. I'm only young.
Yeah, no problem. Just give me 2 seconds because I just need to let my wife in.
Normally leaves her outside.
Yeah, should be.
I'd left the keys in the door so she couldn't get in. Okay, so Ben, what you need to think of in terms of if you're just doing jobs for other people and you're cheap. So if you're in the UK, which I'm guessing you are.
I'm in Ireland, sorry.
Oh, you're in Ireland. Okay, so north or south?
South.
Okay, so you're still in euros then rather than pounds?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you're doing something from your garage, probably something like 50 to 20 euros an hour.
I think a tenner maybe even.
Say again?
A €10 even nearly.
Yeah, I'd probably charge more than that to be honest, but
yeah, it's hard for me to charge my age, you see. People, they question it, they expect it to be cheaper than it actually would cost, They end up losing money then.
Yeah, so you just say no. They need you to repair the car, you don't need to repair it. So just say no, this is what I charge.
Yeah.
So it's like if they're using your age against you, just say no. Do you want your car repairing? If you do, I'll do it. If not, this is what I charge.
Yeah, point as well.
So as long as you know, write a figure down and always use that figure when you're doing stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, and then so when we go through these times now in terms of working out how much labour or how much time it takes to do individual tasks, you're going to times it by that amount. Okay. Yeah. Right. Everybody okay? Yeah. Oliver, if you're worrying about labour costs and stuff like that, again, when we get to the end of the session, if you've got any questions, just ask us. Like I said, and there's loads of people on here who'll help you, no problem. Just to kind of work out if you're, where to charge with it. The primary thing with all of it is making sure you've got the right amount of hours. Because from that, as long as you've got a figure, you can time the two back together, then you're fine. Now, I'm going to bring you into the Thatcham books. And it's not that one, that's the one I'm after, right? And we're quickly going to go through it. And again, it's to give you an idea in terms of what times. And if you're doing 1 panel, 2 panels, 3 panels, 4 panels. And then I'll give you an idea in terms of how I've got generic times in my head. Because it sounds daft, but because I've looked at Thatcham books that much, I'd look at a panel and I'd be in my head giving you a rough idea in terms of the generic time. It's got so much time to do the MET on that panel, so much time to move and refit it, and so much time to paint it. and I'd always be roughly around on it. Okay, so this is the Thatcham time system. It tells you about the history of where Thatcham's come from. So as you can see, we've got mechanical, electrical and trim, and it tells you what's incorporated in that. Now I said this document that I've got here, I will share it onto the Painters Forum so you can all have it and have access to it and use it however you want. And it has got a couple of vehicles in there, so it should still help with generic times. James Clifford has got a much better one. So like I said, I literally scan this in manually, so there's bits of it where it's clipped the edges off and stuff like that, whereas James has got a better one that's a clearer PDF. Give me 2 seconds, I have a hyperactive mouse. So what it does as well, so when I said about these generic times that you can have and everything, so I've already told you about the job allowance. It explains what they are. There's some called a relaxation allowance. So Sonny should make a fortune on that one because he's always relaxing, as you can see in his chair. So the relaxation allowance, it changed in the later ones, but what it would do is it would give you time basically to do things within tasks, between tasks. And that was the relaxation side of it. The Thatcham times moved away from what I'm going to show you tonight, and it moved into a system called Escribe, which is still being used. If we're very nice to Mr. Clifford, he might give us a demonstration on it. Now, Escribe, the way it was it would actually help you create an assessment. It no longer does. What it now does is basically show you the methodology of repair to repair a vehicle. So you can still generate times off it, but it doesn't give you costings. So you still need to attach your labour figure to it. But it will certainly give you the amount of labour to do a task. And it also has a paint calculator in there as well on Escribe. So if I was a body shop, I would either be using that or Easy Methods. Because as a tool, when I hear repairers say, I've not got it because it's expensive, that just makes me think, and this is one of the reasons why I asked the question about limited companies and working for yourself. You need to think of it that if you're doing this as a job or as a business, you need to think about it professionally as a business and not be scared of spending money on tools. Because when I hear body shops say, well, we're not going to get an estimating system because it's too expensive, like I said, it's like thinking of spraying a car without a gun, without a spray gun. And then it's like, I see how much Sonny spends on his spray guns and he's still got an estimating system. And it's like, Sonny, what are you doing? You're spending a fortune spraying cars with absolutely amazing paint guns. You've not got an estimating system yet.
Estimating solutions aren't shiny, though, are
they? But no, well, I don't know. Depends how well you polish Andy, basically. Okay. So as we go through this document, it will go through every aspect of it. So I'll tell you about the corrosion times in terms of what you'd add for it. We've got a cosmetic panel repair guide time. So when I said to you about what's a decimeter squared, so 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters is a decimeter. That if you've got a damage, say for example, that long, using this calculator, it'll suggest a time that you might have as a panel time. I've told you what a job allowance is. So again, so you've got 2 separate times of job allowance of 0.3 and 0.5 for 1 or 2 panels, or more than 2 panels. Exclusions from this, where there are more allowances, are things like cleaning the vehicle, final checks, road test. What it doesn't say in here as well is things like doing a pre and post diagnosis, if you're not charging for it as a specialist charge or separate as a fee. So you can be putting different times on that. And it goes through the interior of the car, the exterior of the car, removing, refitting mechanical parts, testing of equipment. And it will also explain to you what's incorporated in the paint time. Now, if you want to make a quick note of this, again, so if I was doing a packet estimate, on the times that Thatcham give you, so the first panel always has the most time on it. Now, the reason why it has the most time on it is because it allows 1.6 hours, it's either 1.5 or 1.6 hours to mix your paint and identify what it is. So you might find, for example, on something like a rear quarter panel, it might give you 6.5 hours if it's a primary panel, but if the main damage was to the door, and the door was 4 hours or 5 hours, it'll deduct 1.6 hours off the secondary panel. So in general, whatever the highest time is when you're looking at what it gives you to paint it, it's incorporating this 1.6 hours to identify and mix your paint. So if I was looking at a small vehicle, I'd be guessing approximately, as a generic time, on something like a front wing, half-hour MET, on something like a door, as long as it's a fairly basic vehicle, probably an hour MET. You're not removing and refitting it. So you're just looking at a basic MET to move and refit your door handle, door scrapers, stuff like that. Masking off the back of it, so then it's just your paint time. You're probably looking at something like the primary panel 4.5 hours and then everything else 2 hours. So you might get a wing, well, say a door at 4 hours, then the next wing might be 2 hours. The one beside it might be 2 hours. And then what it would also do as well is it'd be roughly 2/3. So you might find one panel at 4 hours, one at 2.6, and then one at 2.8 and one at 1.6. They generally kind of go down in increments. So again, as a rough idea on something small, I'd look at the largest panel subjectively, and I might think, yeah, it'll take me about 4 hours for that. That incorporates me 1.6, and I'd look at 2/3 of it. So it might be 4 hours, 2.8, and then 1.6 across the 3 panels. That should give you roughly around the right paint time for it. And like I said, this is just basic packet estimates. So again, as generic times, on a small vehicle, the small bonnet, I might expect something like 2.5 hours to paint a bonnet on a small vehicle. If it is a medium-sized vehicle, probably about 3.5. And on a big bonnet, probably about 4.5. Now on something like a bonnet, I'd then be thinking like, what you then look at is, what panels does it need blending into is the first thing I'd be thinking of. So if I was doing a bonnet, I'd be looking at the wings. And again, generally, if you've got a generic MET time, it's something big, it might be half an hour MET, maybe an hour, because you're dropping your bumper off, but you don't have to necessarily do anything with it. That you'd be putting down probably something like half hour a wing. So if you're blending a panel, as a rough approximation on the paint side of it, you find it generally give you about half an hour, 0.6, 0.8, depending on the size of it, just to do the blend onto that panel. Now, if you're going into like a medium-sized vehicle, like I said, if you've got something like the doors are bigger, if you've got a small vehicle where it might give you 3.5, 4 hours for the door, it's not going to be an awful lot of difference. It might be 0.1 or 0.2 extra in terms of the time on it, because even though it looks bigger, it's not necessarily an awful lot amount more work for it. Okay. And then if you're thinking about something that's large, if it's something like a van, things have changed a bit on this now, because you see a lot of vans that are in metallics and pretty much most are clear over base, but it didn't used to be. On something like a van side, it'd probably give you about 8.5 hours to 9 hours to paint it. 10 at a touch if it's big, if it's really big. But again, it'd be a generic time. So back doors on a van are about 7.5 hours paint time if you're doing it on your own. Something between 7 and 10 hours on a side. Might give you about 10 to 12 hours on a roof. So again, it still give you just generic time that you can kind of work off. Now, yeah.
Can you just clarify something? Particularly if you're painting vans, as an example, you need to consider you might also be painting the inside of a panel as well.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
If you're painting a side panel on a transit van, for example, because it's had a dent, you've repaired it, there may well be paint time that you need to include on the inside as well. So when you're estimating, you do need to consider that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like I said, out of me, James, and Mark, I'm the least experienced in creating assessments. Because like I said, I just deal total losses. So yeah, good point, Mark. Okay. So if you look at this, so this time here now it's showing here is on a Peugeot 306. So it shows you how old it is. But it's not necessarily a big bonnet. So it's showing half-hour MET. So whatever's on it, washers, stuff like that, half an hour to remove and refit it. To take it off and put it on, 0.4. So it's not an awful lot. And like I said, we're only looking at the clear over base and metallics. But as a single panel, 5 hours. So again, so if you're looking at a generic time, if you think about visualize the size of a bonnet, it's still a fair size bonnet on a 306. It's giving you 5 hours. Now, when I said about this combination time, so when you look at the screen there where you can see paint, comb, and total, comb basically just means combination time. And what that's for is when there's a panel adjacent to it that you're painting as well as a new panel, that'll be the time you'd use. So it's showing there 1.7 hours for if that bonnet was, say for example, you're painting a wing and then you're painting the bonnet as a combination. Rather than putting 5.4 hours down for the bonnet, you put 1.7 because it'll be the secondary panel time. Now, the difference there is if you remove your 1.5 for mixing the paint, which would be on the other panel, you're down to like 4 hours. Because you're already painting the first panel, it's not that much of a difference. It's mainly the preparation time of where the time is in the bonnet. Okay. As you can see, said about bumpers, I've not really got into them. Again, if you're doing a fag packet estimate, most of you, I would expect you to be very familiar with the vehicles you're working on, or know that if you're moving and refitting a bumper, you'll know which ones are going to be a ball ache and which ones aren't. So if it's something simple that bolts on, bolt off, I wouldn't expect it to be more than half an hour to an hour to move and refit it, probably about half an hour. If it's something that's got spot lamps in it, grills, clips like that, then I'd expect it probably, you know, to be 2 hours, 3 hours to move and refit it. So then you're just going off your experience in terms of how much time you'd expect for it. Okay. If you're doing something like a wing, you could always just drop it down. You'll give less time for it. Certainly, if I was using an estimated system and I was dealing with an insurance company, I would never, ever drop anything down, ever. I'd always make sure I'd remove and refit it because it gives you more time to do it. As you can see off this screen here where we've got solid paint underneath it, saying 0.5 hours, job allowance included on the total time. So in their estimating system, it's give it. Now I'm going to flick through this, just looking for something else. The one time I didn't give you for your job allowances was if you're doing a body shell change, where it gives you 0.6 of an hour. But I can't see any of you using that. So we've got mechanical electrical trim. Now this will give you a good idea in terms of generic times. Because transit vans in terms of panel size haven't changed an awful lot. Now, can you all see that okay? Just give me a thumbs up, thumbs down.
Yeah.
You can see, or do you want to make it bigger? I think that's probably about as big as I can make it, actually. So on the left-hand side here, where we have panel size, this is your decimeters squared. So if we were doing a body side on a transit van, so we've got the MET, which there isn't really that much of it. We've got 16.5 hours to move and refit it. And that's the actual panel itself physically. Well, again, roughly in my head, any type of van I look at that's a medium-sized van, then I'll be thinking 15 hours to move and refit that panel in my head. So I'm probably I'm under 1.6 or 1.7 there in my head, but it's roughly there. So that 168 panel size there, what we'll do is it that one or that one? So can you all see something on your screen there where it's showing direct gloss? Your thumbs up, thumbs down. Yeah, so you can see direct loss. Okay. So again, so I'm not saying that you should use these guides for a financial side of it, because the 20-year-old. So to use these guides, it's probably going to be out of money. Something that James will go into is in terms of what's also incorporated in the paint consumable side of it. He explained that to me before a lot better than what I could, so I'll let him do that. The effect of the materials relative to the manufacturer, because obviously depending on what paint source you use is going to cost more. So what I'd suggest is that whatever resources you're using from your paint manufacturer, they should probably give you a charge out guide. So whatever paint manufacturer you're using them, if you haven't got one, ask them for a charge out guide, and then that way it should give you an idea in terms of what you need to be charging out, what you're using. Now, going back to this transit van, we've got 168 decimeters for the side of the van. If we're looking at this, we've got 160 there. As we go across, it goes up in increments. 168 is there, so it's saying just for that panel, the paint materials cost should be 143.80. So if you can get some type of guide, and hopefully, like Escribe certainly does it for you. So this is why I suggest, even though this is a basic estimating thing and it's fag packet stuff, it's better to get Escribe, because then that way you've got something accurate. But at least this will show you the basic principles of how to do it. So that's what you do. So find out the panel size, and then look at the cost for painting that size of wherever it is. And again, I won't load these anyhow, but I'd probably double these figures, to be honest now. And this one's if it's in metallic. So in metallic stuff, it's 168 as a metallic. It showed 172.70 there, so it shows you how far back it is. There's only £5 difference between solid and metallic clear over base. There's a pearl. Everybody okay? Can you give me a thumbs up, please? Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Bring that down there. Okay. Put it down the side. Okay. So again, even though this is 20-odd-year-old, on something like a van, these times here are probably not going to be an awful lot different now. You might have a bit more electricity in the doors and things in terms of electric windows, central locking and stuff like that, but anything in terms of a generic time for a door skin or hanging in a door, these times should be near thereabouts. So again, if I was doing, like I said, you got a body panel there, it's showing 6 hours to paint the side of a van. So I'd have probably thought a little bit more. So it's showing there as a 7.8 as combined metallic paint, which is roughly what I'd have thought it'd have been. So it should give you generic times on it. Goes into to tell you about fuel times, moving it in a fuel tank, for example. The only things I really want to do is just give you rough generic times for doing panels. So I'll try and find you a small vehicle. So we've got the Peugeot 306 there, which is relatively small. You got your jig times. Okay. So Ryan, can you just mute your phone for me, please, mate? So you're getting feedback coming through.
All right.
Thank you. Oh. So it's just whoever's got the, if you can all mute yourself for me, that'd be great. Another generic time that I didn't tell you about, by the way, was a time for offering panels up and checking your alignments. So if I was hanging doors and things like that, I'd probably want at least 0.2, 0.3 for offering it up and making sure the lines are right on it. I've gone through the body times. Yep, so it's giving a bit extra on there, actually showing 3.5 for a bracket jig, 2.5 for universal. I think that's certainly changed, so it probably a bit more, but again, it'll just give you a general idea. Yeah, panel off over up time. It tells you what's incorporated in the paint side of it. Certainly in terms of processes of polishing and fading things, but like I said, all this technology is at least 20-year-old. And then what it should also then do is just give you combination times. Like I said, so if you have got something like a wing, you know, what to do for a bonnet, a bumper. Again, if I was thinking about something's at a corner of a car and you've got a bonnet, a front wing and a bumper, the bonnet's the biggest panel. So I'll be thinking on a medium-sized car with a big bonnet on it. Ford Mondale, for example, I'm probably guessing the major panel is going to be the bonnet, so it'll be about 4.5. The next biggest panel is probably going to be the front bumper. So even though you might think the wing's a bigger panel, because the bumper's longer and wider, it's probably more decimeters squared. But the wing's probably the smallest. So if I was doing a fag packet estimate, I'd use the bonnet first, the bumper, and then the wing. I'd probably be on 4.5, 5 hours for the bonnet, probably about 3.5 on the bumper, and about 1.6 on the wing as a rough paint time. 2 hours MET on the bumper, because it might have spotlights and stuff on it. Probably half hour MET on the bonnet, probably half hour MET on the wing. So as a fag packet estimate, at least then you've got a rough guide, and then you can put down the other allowances that I said to you before in terms of jig allowance, job allowance, wax all, whatever. So as a rough indication, I'm going to stop screen sharing now. In fact, I'm up to on that. What's it showing? So it's showing 23, page 23 of 45. Let's see if there's anything else I've missed on it that you might need to know. Like I said, because I just want to keep it really simple. Just before I pass over to James. Because most of the fag packet estimates I'd expect you to do would generally be on superficial panels. I wouldn't expect you to be getting too intrusive with them. It'd probably be more to do with scratches and indents and stuff like that, rather than it being slam panels and retainer panels and cross members and stuff. So it's a bit more in depth to get into a generic time on it. So the main things was just to do with small, medium, large panels. So I'll stop screen sharing there. So how do you feel with that so far? All okay? So has it been beneficial? Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to make James the host. And what he can then do is he can then go over, not massively more depth, but he will explain things a lot better than I've done to give you context about Escribe, Thatcham methods, and how to put the times across on it.
Okay.
So I'm just going to, right, I'm just making you host, James. There we go.
No problem. Thank you very much.
There you go, and I'll mute myself.
Nice one. Thank you. Cheers for that, Tim. Okay, I'm going to share my screen with you, gentlemen. I'll show you. I'll show you how Escribe works. Let me just go back to the beginning. There we go. Just bear with me whilst I move you all off of this screen. Okay, lovely. Right, thumbs up if you good people can hear me. Okay, Tim, can you just unmute yourself a second? I just need to see what screen you can see there, Tim.
Yeah, so I've got Paint Calculator Portal, mate. I've got your top toolbar of your Google and stuff. Okay,
no problem at all. Lovely. Okay, so I'll show you how it works here. So this is Thatcham's Escribe. And we've landed on this particular page. We can select vehicles in Escribe by putting in the registration, or we can obviously go through and select them basically as to how we want to the actual vehicle itself. So for instance, we can choose it as a car, and you can go through the manufacturers, etc. I'm not going to go through and choose anything, but I am going to show you for this is one particular vehicle that we've already done. We use it in training sessions, and now this is a Ford KA, and this particular vehicle has a quarter panel, the requirement for a new quarter panel on it. And what I want to show you is how Escribe works. So basically, we've selected the actual vehicle. We're now in the damage appraisal area of Escribe, and we can select the actual panels that we want to carry out our damage appraisal upon. In this instance, we've selected the rear quarter panel. Scroll down. Now, what we can see here is, if you like, combinations of panels from the offside rear that we've actually selected on the vehicle. We can look at how the actual quarter panel is delivered. So if we have a look, there's a picture of the quarter panel. That's how we get the quarter panel from the supplier. And actually showing in this picture, well, we've got the parts that are in orange on any panel. They are the parts that Thatcham have actually done their research in replacing. The bits that you can see in the crosshatch grey, they're the bits that they throw away. Now, this is a 3-door vehicle, so we've only got what they call, I'll just close that image down. We've got what they call a quarter panel A. If this was a 5-door vehicle, you'd have a selection, you'd be able to have a choice between quarter panel A and quarter panel B. And quarter panel B actually is a smaller, shorter version of the quarter panel A. So if this was a 5-door vehicle, it would actually run into the wheel arch, where you'd be able to then actually cut it through the wheel arch. Just bear with me 1 second, because I just need to plug the laptop back in. Sorry about that. Okay, so what we've done, we've selected to replace this quarter panel, nothing else at all, just the quarter panel on the vehicle. So as we run through when you're assessing a damaged vehicle, we operate on what we call the first and last undamaged panels. So when you look at a car, if your door was damaged and it was a 3-door car like this KA, for instance, and you were going to assess the damage on that vehicle and it was just the door, we'd look at the first and last undamaged panels, which would be the front wing and the back quarter. Now, if it's a metallic and we're going to blend, then we are going to include to actually blend those panels. If it's just a door, then we're only going to deal with the door on itself. So we start with this first and last undamaged panels, and then we approach the actual assessing of the damaged vehicle by using a process that's called core tasks and supporting operations. So you would start with your first panel. If it's the front wing, your core task is going to be blend. Your supporting operations are going to be remove the repeater lamp, the shield, the wheel, the front bumper would possibly need to be released. So you'd be looking for those items and recording times against each of those tasks. Your main task, because I'm using Escribe, because we would be using a piece of calculation software like Auditing, for instance, the actual replacement of the door is taken into consideration. When you basically click to replace it, it will give you all the times automatically for it. So the only things that you would have to do or add to consider on that would be if there are extras such as blending the door handle or blending the door mirror if you needed to do so. So in this instance, as I say, back to the KA here, we've selected a quarter panel. We're just going to replace the quarter panel. These are our methods. It's telling me there's my methods for the quarter panel, so I can actually look at the methods for the quarter panel. So here's the Thatcham methods. Tim, can you just give me a thumbs up that that screen is there? Lovely.
Yeah.
So what we can see here is this is the quarter panel, and in the methods, well, first and foremost, on the first page, it's telling us, here we go, for replacement. It's telling us that the materials that it's made from are mild steel, and the joining technologies that we're going to require are going to be bonded. There is a minor amount of welding on here, and we can see from this diagram here exactly what we're going to be doing on it. So you can see around the edge here, it's showing us that we've got 2 spot welds, one at the bottom of the wheel arch, one at the top. The rest of it is a 2-pack adhesive in and around the wheel arch. Across the bottom of the sill, it's telling us that we've got 19 spot welds across there and 13 plug welds. So we've got spot welds along the bottom of the sill where the actual pinch welds are, and then we're going to have plug welds which go up into the actual inner sill reinforcement panel. So this type of information is incredibly handy. It's showing us also, if you like, the cut lines. This is where we're going to cut this quarter panel. So we've got a definitive end on it. The way something like Auditing works, when you replace a panel, it will automatically only give you the 100 centimeter rule, which means that for the 10 centimeter rule, sorry, 100 millimeter rule, that means that for 10 centimeters after your join, that's all you're getting paid to complete your paintwork and your finishing, etc. So therefore you're going to have to blend, especially on a panel like this, you're going to blend up into the cantrail. So you need to add, remember to add that in. Okay, so that's our methods. Let me just go back here. We'll carry on supporting operations. Now, Tim, is that showing the same screen? Lovely. So on supporting operations, we would be choosing whether or not we're going to put in any available blends. I've chosen not to do so on this vehicle. It's a solid white colour. It is a clear over base colour, so we should be okay with it, but that's my choice. No issues at all if people decide that they're going to have to blend a colour. We'll move forward through to the summary, and now we are here on the last page. And automatically it has included in methods. Now we're doing the offside rear quarter panel. You can see it's automatically included the left-hand rear lamp assembly. So this is already telling me that if we're putting a quarter panel on one side, we're going to have to take the lamp out on the other side. The reason for that is because the removal of the rear bumper does require for both rear lamps to be removed from the vehicle. Now, we actually have a methods pack here. I'll show you what the methods pack looks like. So these are all of the tasks that you're going to be required to carry out as far as replacing that quarter panel is concerned. It gives us a lot of technical information. So we have our strip route through the actual repair process here, and then we have 2 types of information. So we have additional information, which is marked here on the right-hand side of the page with a little circle and a green eye in the middle. And then we have torque settings. So just on this alone, if we're going to be working on that vehicle, immediately it's telling me that we're going to have to disconnect the battery. So it's telling me to disconnect the positive terminal, and it's also giving me the Newton meters, actual tightening torques for when we actually come to put that back together. In the additional information, I can see straight away what material the bumper's made from. So it's telling me what that bumper's actually made from. There's other information here: bumper rear fixings, release bumper from fixings, unclipped number plate wiring from rear bumper before fully removing. So there's a lot of information that we can actually get from our Escribe. Right, what we now have, and this is the interesting part, when we look into Escribe, here is a list of all of the tasks that are going to be required to replace that quarter panel. And these are marked up in minutes. I'm going to go into a different area of the summary. Maybe I'm not. Yes, here we go. So this is now telling us, this is like an overview of the actual repair, replace of that quarter panel. And it's telling me 205 decimeters squared. So that's 205 of those beer mats sized squares is the actual size of that panel. And this is where it becomes interesting, because we now know the panel size of it. We can work out the actual cost of the paint and materials for that particular vehicle. It's given us a breakdown here, and we'll come to the cost of the paint materials in a minute because that's very interesting. It's given us a breakdown here. So we've got MET hours. So the stripping and fitting time is 4.9 hours. But what we've got here is an overlap time of 0.9. So they actually take the overlap time comes out. It's taken out. So otherwise we would end up with 5.8 hours. And the reason for that is, in this particular instance, to do the quarter panel, we need to take the bumper off. And so it takes out that MET overlap time. You'd get, otherwise you'd be doubling up on the bumper time. So it's taken out the overlap time for that. We've got our panel hours at 8.7 hours, and there is no panel overlap time. If we were replacing a quarter panel and a rear lamp panel, we would have an overlap time, and the overlap time is given where two seams share a commonality. So for instance, down the center, a quarter panel on its own, there's no commonality there. Quarter panel and a lamp panel, if the lamp panel joins to the quarter panel, then that seam will be the commonality. So they will take an overlap time out for the preparation and cleaning of that seam, but you do get a bit of extra time for welding it in.
Just to stop you there for a second, James. So just give James a thumbs up if you understand what overlap is. Yeah, okay, right, go on, James.
That's good, because you're doing better than me then as far as that one's concerned. Okay, so now we're going to have a look here. We can see breakdown. So if we have a look at a rear bumper, so there's our miscellaneous rear bumper, there's our number plate, and here's our overlap. So all of these items here to take that rear bumper off are also replicated in the quarter panel. So basically we would have to do it twice. So they've taken that amount of time out of there. As I said before, these are all in minutes. The beautiful thing about seeing this is if you were putting a quarter panel on, and I don't know how you guys work. I don't know what your workshops are like, etc. So the type of work that you get coming through there, I'm not 100% certain on. But the beauty about having a program like Escribe is that you can identify the method of repair that you need to employ to reinstate that vehicle when you're doing obviously going through the repair process. To put a quarter panel on that vehicle, would you have believed that you have to take out the front seat? Would you have realized the front seat has to come out? No. And that's the beauty about methodology. Once we didn't write this program, we want to play the game, and the rules of the game are harsh and demanding, but we didn't write the rules. And we'll play by the rules. So when it comes to negotiating with an insurance engineer, this is the sort of thing that I would be looking at to make sure that this is included in repair assessments. We can come up with an assessment that looks roughly about the same time, but when we interrogate the hours that are in that repair assessment, we can often find ourselves that whilst the hours are in total are in the right ballpark, there'll be stuff in there that shouldn't be in there, and there will be stuff that's missing from there that should be in there. So Thatcham even come right the way down to, if we scroll up a bit, we've got a dummy variable here. So this is a dummy time that they've actually input into the actual process to drain and refill the tank, and that's just over 24 minutes. Is the amount of time they'll give you to drain and refill the fuel tank, because you need to take the fuel tank out. Or do you? So when we come down here and have a look, we've got the fuel filler cap, nearly 8 seconds to take that off. The fuel filler flap, nearly 7 minutes to take that off. The fuel filler tube, the fuel tank seal and blank off. Now I immediately know we're not going to be taking the tank out according to Thatcham. But in Auditex, it will automatically give you the time to remove the tank, and you can't remove the tank if it has fuel in it, so you still have to drain that fuel off. Fuel tank sender unit cover and fuel tank sender pump unit. Now, does anyone think, well, why do they have to come out? Has anyone got any questions as far as that's concerned? No questions?
Just give me James a thumbs up if you got a question.
Rob.
Just unmute yourself, Rob. Bottom left-hand corner of your screen, you got a microphone. Just click on it. It will mute.
I'm muted there.
They don't have to come out.
What makes you say that?
It's mental to take out the fuel sender and the cover. Oh, the cover, but the pump unit, it will stay in the tank. You'll just disconnect the wires.
Okay, so how do you drain the fuel out of it safely?
By a proper retriever down the neck of the tank.
Except for that they have anti-siphoning devices in the neck of the tanks. So as I said to you there, Rob, the thing about this is, you know, we want to play the game. The rules of the game are harsh and demanding. We didn't define the rules. A greater power than us did do. And that's what this is telling us. Mr. Insurance Engineer has no argument with something like this when it comes to actually negotiating with him. I know it seems really, really strange to think, why do we have to do something like that? Yeah. If this was a Renault Clio, the first item on the Renault Clio list that you would look at on this particular program, the first item in the strip list is actually remove the air filter for fitting a quarter panel. And as mad as it seems, there is some serious logic behind it, because you have to remove the air filter to take the cover off the battery to disconnect the battery. So now you can see how they actually, when Thatcham do a research into an accident damaged vehicle and how to repair it, they really do go quite in depth into it. Okay, so what I want to show you is, now we Tim actually told us earlier on there what a decimeter square is. So as we know, it's 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters. How much do you want to, maybe one at a time, unmute yourself and just let me know how much you would charge to paint a door mirror?
So what I'll do is go through it. So we'll start, I'll go through people one by one. So Svetlana, you're looking gorgeous.
Thank you. So are you, Tim. I've had the same price for door mirrors for 25 years, and that's £35.
And that includes labour and materials?
That's the lot, yeah. When I was VAT registered, there'd be VAT on top of that.
Do you want to go do the answer at the end of it, James? Yeah.
Say that again.
So do you want to give the answer at the end of it? We'll go through them all one by one and then do the response at the end.
Well, I mean, if everyone, if the rest of the lads on the call here, if they all sort of are in the same area, do they just want to give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down? Right. Okay.
Brian, so what would you charge? Just unmute yourself.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
50 quid plus the VAT.
Right.
Well, I do a lot of commercials as well, but usually for a car, not including fitting, if it was just paint a mirror back and hand back to the customer, it'll be in around £30. But if it was for a Scania R series, for instance, that there'd be about £90, because the mirror on the Scania has to separate into two pieces with masking and so on, 2-pack primer. They don't come ready primed or anything like that, you see.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So Tim, should we do the reveal on it then? Because I think
I just asked David first, and then I'll ask Sonny as well, and they'll Sonny on the end of it.
Excuse me.
Because Sonny's in Blackburn, so he'll probably pay you to paint it for him. So David, so what would you charge, Mr. Layton? So on your bottom left-hand corner is your microphone. If you click on it, it'll mute you.
We're probably about £30, £35 tops, I would have thought, with where we are.
Yeah, okay. And whereabouts are you? Oh, he's muted himself again. So go on, Sonny.
Sorry, in Hull.
Hull, right, okay. Sonny?
£35 if I've got the paint already in stock. So this is a common colour and I don't have to mix it. If I have to mix my colour, then around about 45 to 50.
Right, back to you, James.
Okay, so let's just, as I said before, we've already confirmed the size of a decimeter square, which is 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters. Would you all be in relative agreement that a door mirror would probably not exceed, except for obviously in the case of the Scania, would probably not exceed 5 decimeters squared. If you agree with that, yeah, okay. So what we're going to have a look here, we will choose PPG as the paint manufacturer in this particular instance. No reason other than somebody I was talking to. I was talking to somebody today and they were on PPG. But let's have a look at that. So we've got, as you can see there, gentlemen, we got 5 decimeters squared. We're going to use PPG as our paint supplier. Are you ready? This is just calculating. It's probably going to be a bit slow because of the... Oh, it's changed. Hold on. PPT. There we go. That is just materials that you can see there. How frightening is that? Excuse my bedtime alarm going off. So yeah, you can see here, this is, and the way that Thatcham worked this out is because it doesn't really matter the size, the decimeter size. Well, no, before we go on, if we take a bonnet for a KA, now I've had a look, a bonnet is about 204 decimeters squared. So we'll put our 204 in there. Let's just say, for argument's sake, that we're going with PPG. It's a 2-stage metallic clear over base. We've got £108.25. So make note of that. We're going to calculate it again. This is just for the bonnet. So the bonnet's £456. Paint and materials. But now if we add into that 204, our 5 decimeters squared that we had for our mirror, we've now got 209 decimeters squared. Watch how much that 456 goes up. So it's gone up by a little over 6 quid. 9 quid, sorry. Anyone understand why that might be?
Because you've already mixed it all up and done your spray outs and checked your code and been on the computer, etc.
That's correct. That's correct. So what I'll show you on here is how Thatcham actually come up with their. Here we go. So when you actually put your first panel in, it will give you enough materials. It doesn't include your wet materials on this particular Thatcham newsletter, but it'll tell you the materials that you need for your main panel. If you're then going to blend a panel or do an additional panel, these materials here, these are the only ones that it adds into it. So even though it was a small door mirror, it still took into consideration all of these items here on the left hand side of the screen. So it is quite a clever piece of kit at being able to give you an awful lot of information. I'll just do a couple more bits with you. So if I go back to our portal, back to the beginning, so we have got a lot of information in here. We can have a look at methods.
Could I just ask, is it assuming a minimum mix quantity?
It does assume a minimum mix for the decimeter squared that you actually put in there.
Because in my experience, PPG, unless you're mixing a litre, they don't want to talk to you if you're looking at advice on tinting a colour or colour match and things like that. So you know, I mean, we personally use in my workshop, we use a set of scientific scales. I've got an extra decimal point, and we can accurately mix much smaller quantities.
And I don't disagree with you at all there, Brian. You know, you're gonna, again, this is the wonderful thing about your own set of skills. You will know what you can do, what you can actually play with, and how far you can squeeze something until it actually starts to squeak. So, you know, knowing how well you can play with the materials that you've got, I think is of vital importance.
Okay.
Okay, so let's just have a quick look through. We're gonna have a, when we looked at the KA, we looked at what they called the full route. We're now going to have a look at methods direct. So we'll just have a look at this particular vehicle. Straight away we can see it's a Jaguar XF, sexiest motor on the road, I hasten to add, Tim. Immediately I can see there's an ADAS alert on this vehicle. So it's telling me there's a radar behind the corner of the rear bumper. And also on the right hand side of the rear bumper. This here, forward alert, data not available, it just means that there is a possibility that there are other ADAS items fitted to this particular vehicle. Again, the information that it actually provides us, let's click on that. So we go quarter panel A, methods being generated. We're a bit slow because of the internet, because it's such a large program. Click to open it up, and here we go. So we've got Thatcham methods for this for the actual replacement of the quarter panel on this particular vehicle. One of the things that I very much enjoy doing is when I see people posting pictures of the work, the wonderful work they do in their workshop, is I love looking at those pictures and seeing what is it they haven't removed. And if they haven't removed it, have they charged for it? You know, and if they haven't charged for it, then there's a shortfall in their estimating process. And if they have charged for it, be very careful, because you're obviously broadcasting your fraudulent estimating all over social media. Okay, let's close these down. Tim, was there anything else that you wanted me to show with Escribe?
Pretty much it, really. Like I said, it's what I'll do now is I'll just kind of open it up so everybody can talk and ask questions if they want to, and see if there's anything else they'd like us to cover that we've not covered. Like I said, my primary aim was just to give you an idea in terms of how to do a fag packet estimate and where I'd come up with the generic hours for a wing, a door, a quarter panel, a bonnet, a roof, a side, and for a small, medium, large. And again, just in terms of a rough cost of paint cost. You can see from the paint guide that I was using and where it's showing the decimeters squared compared to what James was just showing them with paint cost, the differential between the two of them. So if I post a guide from 2003, you could probably double everything that's on it when you compare it to what Escribe is. But what I would say is that if it's not somebody who's working from the shed or the garage and they're just knocking the odd job out, if you own a body shop, get an estimating tool. So it's an absolute no-brainer, because I was talking to James before, and I just said in terms of I don't have any estimating tools or Escribe or anything like that, because the type of engineering I do, which a lot of it's to do with rejection of goods or forensic engineering, I don't actually inspect accident damaged vehicles, and I don't negotiate with repairers, so I don't need any type of estimating tool. When I do need access to stuff like that, I generally speak to Mark, because he's got access to it. Or again, I might speak to James, because James can actually create assessments for repairers like yourselves as well. So it's certainly worthwhile bearing in mind using that part of James's services. But for me, it was literally just give you a rough idea in terms of walking up to a car, getting a rough idea in terms of in your head how many hours to stick against it. Again, rough idea in terms of paint materials cost, so that if you were quoting a punter on the street who walked in, it'd give you an idea of what to do. And what I wanted with James was just kind of then develop on that and say, moving on from a fag packet estimate, using resources like Escribe, easy methods, and estimating tools like Auditing, the importance of using them, because when you've got a tool like this, and this is what I was explaining to James before, like I said, I don't have these estimating tools. I've got other resources that I do use, and this is also one of the reasons why I posted about being either a limited company or working for yourself. And I'm trying to kind of nudge people to understand the importance of running your business correctly. And part of that is thinking that if you're a sole worker working for yourself, what you generally find is that you don't want to spend money, because when you quote to do a job and you get cash in your hand, you get paid for it. People think of that money as being their money. It's as simple as that. And extending that to think of, well, I've just earned some money, why would I want to spend it on an estimating tool because it's costing me money? You have to alter your mindset and think, if this is a business, it's not me owning that product or that service or an estimating tool. It's the business that owns it. And moving away from something where you're a sole practitioner to something where you are a limited company, it's the company that's buying the assets. And a part of doing that, the last thing you want is tons of money at the end of the year that you can't spend that you're going to get taxed on. So it's much better to buy a tool and resource that your company can use, which reduces your amount of profit and the tax you pay, that will ultimately help you earn more profit the year after. So that's also the reason why the week where that post on about being a limited company and sole practitioner, where it came from, because it got something like 80 odd comments on it, it went daft. And what I wanted to do was just expand on it and say, you need to alter your mindset and not be scared to spend money on things that earn you more money. So using a tool like Easy Methods, Audit, other estimating systems or whatever, if a tool generates money for you, irrespective as to whether it's a spray gun, calibration system or tools, spend money on it. Because if it makes you money, spend it. If it loses you money, get rid of it. So anybody who's got a body shop, you know, don't be scared of investing in things that make you profit. Back over to you, James.
Yeah, absolutely. So important that you know, like you said there, Tim. When you make money, don't believe that it's your own. Reinvest it back into the business. Use it to give yourself some leverage in what you're doing. So important. So important. Tim, what do you want to do? You know, the book that you've done now. I'm quite happy that one I sent you over there. If you want to make it available, it's not a problem.
Yeah, because I think that's much better than the one I've done. Like I said, I spent a good few hours at weekend photocopying it and scanning it, and it was hard trying to bend into place and all the rest of it. So yeah, the fact you've got a clear PDF's perfect for it. Yeah, not only that, the actual one that I sent you over there, and you feel free to put it up in for the lads to get hold of in any way you want. It also has, it's all hyperlinked, etc., through the book, so you can just select from the index where you want to read. Right. But, so what he's done there is he's given me 3 separate PDFs as well. So I'll stick them on for you, Sonny, for the group. And then if you want to, again, if anybody who's on this session as well, if you actually want to explain to other members who weren't on the session what's gone on and what's been said, and if you found it beneficial or not. Because like I said, the reason why I'm doing stuff like this for free is to help you primarily, and because what I want is Bodyshops to be successful more than anything else. And not only that, I don't want you just to be successful. I want you to be able to understand how to view the industry and look where the profit is and how you can actually access that profit by giving you access to people like James or Mark, or you know, experts like Sonny on the painting side of it. And it's just, don't be scared of asking is the first thing, but if there's resource there, use it, irrespective as to whether it's a tool or a person.
So how do we access Escribe then?
Yeah, how much is it?
All right, it's not cheap, unfortunately. Yeah. It's annually, the cost of it is about nearly £3,000. Yeah, I know. I think a single user license for the lowest level is about £1,800 a year. But in all honesty, gentlemen, if I show you just what we've got here, bear with me 1 second, right, what we've got on screen at the moment.
Just while you do that, James, so Ryan's asked, is there a cost-effective estimate system for a small body shop, i.e. 1 to 3 people? What I would say to that, Ryan, is you're probably using somebody like Estimate Solutions or James to create assessments for you. On something like this, it's good to have an understanding of how to create assessments yourself and know roughly what type of labour you've got involved in it. It's much better. So if you're a small body shop with 1 to 3 people in it, you'll be doing some type of insurance work somewhere along the line. You certainly need to be costing up your jobs to provide those quotes to customers. In situations like that, I'd outsource it rather than buy the tool yourself, because the other side of it is that as an engineer, if I was interrogating an assessment, I could spend a good couple of hours creating an assessment, and same if you're an estimator. If you've only got 1 to 3 people, you're much more productive physically working on a vehicle than you are writing an assessment. So I would subcontract it out to a different resource. So I hope that helps you. Right, James? Yeah, no problem. Okay, well, just on the book there that Tim has got, Tim, is that the cosmetic panel repair guide times on your screen? Yeah, it is, yeah. Right, okay. So just in the book that Tim's got there that you can have access to, these last 4 pages of that particular book
although 2 of them are just introductions. So basically, nothing more than that. But
are these up to date as well, James?
No, well, this is the same book. I think you'll find, Tim, that you've got there.
Yeah.
But it does give, for people that are looking to, I mean, the first thing I would say to you is understand better how estimating works, what it's about, what it is you're trying to do with it, what sits behind it, the amount of thought that's gone into assessing accident damaged vehicles. Because it's once you start to understand that area of assessing, that part of assessing an accident damaged vehicle, you start to realize what you have to do to make your money from it. So what we're looking at here, as you can see on screen, what we've got here, this is cosmetic panel repair time guides. So what we're looking at, if you like, here is if the actual damage in the panel is between 0 and 50 decimeters squared, your repair time is roughly about half an hour. Then what it goes on to tell you there, dependent upon the type of trim or the trim level of the vehicle, if it's a bonnet, you can charge 0.3 of an hour. So you can see here what we've got. If we've got a dent that's just say 50 decimeters squared, repair time is going to be half an hour. The actual MET strip time is going to be 0.3. So we're now on 0.8. And it says if the bumper needs to be removed, then you add an extra 0.4 on there. And then what we've got here in terms of painting are your time. So you would have, if it's a small bonnet, 1.3 hours plus what you've already got. Plus you would also, you can see you've got the opportunity there for a blend times, but it goes on to explain. It does take a bit of reading. It is worth reading just to understand it. It will make it easier for you. This is not a subject, as Tim will agree here, is not a subject that you can learn overnight. You have to constantly be reading up what's behind the information that you're working with.
That's kind of going back to what I said at the start of it. So because my background was total loss in vehicles, so even though I've used Auditex from before 2000, so probably like 1996, 97 was when I first started using it, I pretty much always total loss vehicles. So I never need to actually physically create an assessment. Now I have done it. The last time I used Auditex was probably about 2010. So I'm at least 10 years out of date. And because I've not got a need to understand it, I don't need to go in the background of it. Whereas the likes of somebody like James, where, and I'm probably sure you'll agree with this as well, that different resources provide different tools that generate different hours. So Easy Methods has things in the methodology that Escribe doesn't have, and vice versa. If you go on to Auditex, you can go through Auditex as an assessment and generate an assessment, but when you start interrogating it, you'll find just by using Escribe or Easy Methods that there's bits within that Auditex hasn't taken into consideration, and it might be actually a separate repair process. So just having that and understanding it, and say for example creating an Auditex assessment and then cross-referencing it to a different resource and doing the two, moving across, it helps you work out what's not involved within the times that Auditex is generating or other estimating systems. And by doing that, it helps you build your assessment better, gives you a better repair plan. Well, ultimately, it gives you more time and more profit. And that's the bit that's where the investment's, why it's worth it. Right, James?
It looks to me like these areas are in centimeter squares, not decimeters.
When you say the areas, right, if you read along the top, and you'll have to forgive me because I have only picked this back up again after about 12 years this afternoon when Tim spoke to me. It shows you there centimeters. So yes, you're quite right, centimeter squared. My apologies there. So, but we're used to working these days in decimeter squared. Yeah. That's how they measure panel sizes for the application of paint.
Right. So the newer way of doing it is with decimeters, not with centimeters.
That's correct, yes.
Right, yeah, okay, right. No, I just want to clarify that. Cheers, mate.
Yeah, sure. I'm the same. It's like this book that I photocopied, which is basically what James is showing now. It was the last one that was a hard copy before it went across to Escribe, which was what James was showing you before. But even with that, it's like it's 18 years old, the book, and it was just luckily I still had it stashed away somewhere when we copied it. So, and like I said, it's not my complete field of expertise, but again, it's just to kind of give you a general idea.
Gentlemen, I'm actually going to leave you now because my dinner's ready. It has
Sure.
been for half an hour.
Right. So can you just pass me back over as host again, James?
Yeah, of course, before I
Just stop
disappear.
screen sharing. Yeah.
Nice
So,
one, Rob. Thank you very much. Right. Let's put you back as host there, Tim.
Many thanks, James.
I mean, I thank you very much. It's good to see you all as well. There we go. Take
nice
care.
one, James.
Yeah,
Thanks
thank
a lot,
you.
James, for doing
Thank
that.
you, James.
Much
Cheers.
appreciated.
More than
Bye.
welcome. Take care now. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye. Right, so that's pretty much the estimating side of it covered. So you can all unmute yourself if you want to. And then I can open it up to any questions you want, or whether it's anything to do with estimated, or whether, Mark, have you got anything further to input across from what me and James have done?
No, what I would say is that it can sometimes be very difficult to know everything that needs to be done as part of a repair, you know, and if you've got the methods and the methods give you a list of everything that's needed, it does make it a lot easier for you. It's funny, I had a conversation with Kerry the other day regarding estimating costs, and Kerry will tell you he quoted sort of an arbitrary figure for repairing a vehicle, and then once it was put through Auditing, it was almost 4 times the actual cost, and it blew him away, you know, to understand that those estimating systems, if you use them properly, can generate you far more than it will actually cost you to use them in the first place. So he was saying you can have a pay-as-you-go sort of Auditing subscription where you only, it'll cost you £50 for an estimate, but you'll more than get that back, you know, when you consider that it includes all the things that you need to consider when you're estimating a vehicle, you know, because, you know, if you select to replace a wing, you know, it by and large, it will generate every process required in order to carry out that operation to a certain extent without you having to think about it, you know, and it'll tell you what the right sort of size of paint area is. It'll calculate how much materials is involved. It'll include all the, you know, all the sort of arbitrary bits and pieces that you need, masking materials, etc., etc. In a way, you've got to also think about, when you're estimating, about your time. Do you want to be spending hours and hours writing stuff out? Right, okay, we're going to take the wing liner off, and we're going to take the wheel off, and then we're going to undo the wheel nuts, and we're going to take the stripe off. You know what I mean? You don't really want to be wasting your time doing that. Yeah. Whereas you can whiz on an Auditing, you can spend 20 minutes on Auditing and generate far more profit simply by, you know what I mean, following that process. I mean, I don't know whether you guys would particularly need Escribe at this point, unless you're doing volumes of business for insurers where it's a mandatory requirement. You know what I mean?
You can use easy methods.
Makes me wonder.
You can use easy methods, though, can't you? Easy methods is cheaper.
Yeah,
300 Marsh and Bancardi.
You can. What I mean, there are benefits to sort of both systems. I mean, today I looked at what was the vehicle I looked at today? A Skoda Octavia VRS, right? And it had a front bumper fitted, right? Now, on that particular year, it doesn't have a radar in the bumper, but it does have a camera in the windscreen, right? Now, I didn't know that. So I'm saying to the repairer, have you done a calibration on it? Right. So, and he's come back to me and said, no, didn't need to do a calibration because it hasn't got a radar on the bumper. Right. So he's done a geometry check on the vehicle and adjusted the rear suspension on it, which altered the thrust angle. Well, if you actually read the methods, yeah, if you adjust the rear suspension, the camera has to be calibrated, right? So he's missed out on a couple of £100 worth of calibration costs because he didn't know that the camera needs calibrating as well as potentially the radar. So these things, you know, this information, you guys at some point, if you're doing volumes of business, you need to know this, because there's a duty of care as well. If you don't investigate whether a car's got that kind of equipment, you know, and you're unfortunate enough to, well, come a cropper, let's say, you know, because of something failing. I mean, I'll give you an example, right? I used to work for a Volkswagen agent, and I know this for a fact. You ever seen them Golfs that they've got a radar in the bumper? They're like a square box in the center of the front bumper, right? Well, if you go around, give them a good kick, yeah, then the automatic braking that some of them have got stops working, or it's far too efficient. You could be driving down the road,
it fucking stops,
uncalibrated, and it'll see a van door 200 yards up the road, and it'll slam the anchors on. Now, if you've had your car repaired and, you know, this has not been considered and it's not been calibrated, it's on you. So what I'm saying is, if you're doing that kind of work, you really need to have that resource, either Easy Methods or Escribe. I mean, quite frankly, you know what? If you get stuck with something, send me a message. I'll have a look for you if needs be. I can help you with stuff like that. I mean, Kerry, you have done that, haven't you? You know, if you get stuck with something.
A couple of times.
Yeah, I think we had an issue with a repairer the other week who was refusing to pay straight away, wasn't he? He put something in his authority, and how did he get on with that?
I kept his car until, well, I kept the customer's car until the insurer actually paid. Had a bit of an argument with them for about 2 days, and then told him if it carries on, I'll charge him extra. And the money was in the bank within an extra hour, and the customer got his car.
Not knowledge in this game is power. I will add, though, there was some input from Mr. Kelly for that particular one, relating to unfair terms in a contract, as I recall. But I suppose what I'm trying to say to you is we're all here to help you. You know, I mean, I work for an insurer. I'm not going to say who the insurer is. I work for an insurer, and I've kind of got the inside track on how a lot of this works. Yeah. And Kerry's been talking to me about potentially becoming an approved repairer for an insurer, and all of these things, you know, Escribe, Easy Methods, Auditing, estimating systems, etc. They're kind of all mandatory now, you know. So if you're going to be doing volumes of business, you need to consider using this stuff. But I can tell you categorically, it will make you money. Auditing will make you money.
Can you say about networking? Because with Auditing, if you can network it straight to the engineer, you cut out everybody else, don't you?
Of course you do. Yeah, there's the speed element of it for a start. You're sending images at the same time. You're getting messages back and forth to the engineer. You know, if you do an estimate and the engineer says, oh, well, you don't need to do that, you can have that conversation with them over Auditing, send them a mail. This is why I need to do it. You know what I mean? And it does save a lot of messing about. I mean, there's even outer invoice now. As soon as you've done the job on Auditing, you can fire them an invoice and it can be paid straight away.
I'll give you another tip on it as well. Something else you can do with insurance companies. So going back to, I think it was Kerry. Yeah, Kerry put it on there about the cost being £55 per assessment on Auditing. What you can do is you ring up the insurance company, you say, can you tell me what your Auditing code is? And they'll tell you what the code is to send it to the engineer. There you go, well, my code is this. Well, can you do me a favor? Can you send me a template across with your set format out? So what happens then is that when they send you the template across to fill out, because it's their template and not your template, you don't get charged your 55 quid. So it basically means that to you, it's free. And then because they've sent it you, it's already gone through the order gate. So it already recognises it as being from that insurance company. So it doesn't get held up and bounced back at you. Which then means that if you've then got separate templates in your order text, you can actually then pre-populate their assessment, and ping it back with all your statutory stuff that you'd normally stick on every assessment on it, and then create your assessment and fire it through. And it actually doesn't cost you anything because the insurance company ends up paying for the template, not you. So if you know how to do it, you can do loads of little things.
Some insurers have cottoned on to that, though. To be fair, but there are still smaller ones that, yeah.
Lost your voice, Matt. Oh, you're back again.
Yeah, they will send you, as you said, they'll send you a template.
Yeah, and
the larger ones have.
There's loads of little tricks you can do. Like I said, it's when I used to work for Aviva Insurance, I was the technical specialist for the networks, and some of the tricks that some of the wise repairers had sussed out. So used to have basically. We've got something called an order gate, which filters out what comes in and what goes out, and whether it allows stuff in zone 99 or on a cost basis. And what they would do is they'd ping an assessment through, but with no labor rate on it, and see if it goes through and whether it gets rejected. And then what they'd then do is they carry on increasing the labor rate until which point it wouldn't go through. So they knew where the repair cost would be, at which point it needs intervention by an engineer, and then they'd also then know what the overall costings would be, so it doesn't need intervention by an engineer. And then what they then do is they'd ping the jobs through so it'd auto-authorise it just below the figure. They do the job and stick a supplementary in and pass it through. If the supplementary was still quite small, it was still self-authorised, but it meant that they could actually get jobs through the engineering system without it being seen by an engineer. So you got tricks like that. So I used to pick up on stuff like that. So I used to audit all the Auditex assessments coming through. I'd look for consistencies from different repairers to find out whether there was a consistent repair cost coming through on a regular basis, which used to happen quite a lot from a couple of repairers. They'd all come through at bang on 2,600 quid. I'm like, what's going on? Or bang on 1,250. I'm like, how can you have 20 jobs at 1,250 quid and then you've got supplementaries all over the shop? So there's loads of stuff you can do. But have any of you got any questions at all? Anything else you'd like to ask, or even stuff that's not estimating?
I just thought the overall thing of tonight is this is how I joined Fix Auto back in the early days, and this estimating thing was the most important thing. But you are trying to say estimate by hours, never by a panel or a price.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the golden rule, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, the other thing is you need to consider, the estimator will make or break your business. If you don't estimate correctly and charge correctly, and include all those things that you are providing, then potentially you could break your business. You need to charge accordingly.
It showed me the other day talking to the Auditex guy in respect to the job I talked to you about, Mark.
Yeah.
The Jag bumper, rear bumper and bonnet, literally just for a repaint, that I cost out at £550 plus the VAT. It was a quick job. Yeah. Putting it for Auditex to do an estimate for that job actually bumped the price to nearly £1,700, including in VAT. And that's for all the stuff that you actually miss and you don't look at or you overlook when you just quickly look at a job for a price.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. So, is an estimate then worth 50 quid? You're going to pay for an estimate. Is it worth 50 quid? If you're gonna churn another £1,200 out of one job, it's well worth the 50 quid, isn't it? Well worth.
The thing is, if you churn out 1,200 quid from the one job, that could actually buy your Auditex for the year, the license, and pays for everything else.
Yeah,
exactly.
Just going back to what you said up there before was in terms of the importance of people job roles in a body shop. The most important person in a body shop is the front of house, the reception, more over above anybody else, because they're the ones who get your customers and keep them in. The second most important person then is the estimator, because they build your profit up, and it's only then after that that the other operatives then have a basis of profit making within your business, and that generally comes through efficiencies and processes and organizational. But the primary two ones are your front of house and your estimators, because that's where all the profit is. At the end of the day, even though you might enjoy working on cars and repairing them, ultimately you need to get paid, and the thing to do is get paid as much as you can for as little work as you can do as possible. So just going over to Oliver, so I said before, I'll come back to you in terms of labour rates. So have you got anything you'd like to ask me in terms of working out your own labour rate, or what to do, or do you know how to do it, or any ideas?
No, it's nothing I've looked at personally, because I actually work for my dad. So I would say I've jumped on here as like just trying to get the way of things and stuff, because obviously he's trying to push me in that direction and actually learn more about it. Thinking about it, I'm sure he's around 40, 45 per hour. I think, like I say, I could be wildly off there, but how like you'd start working it out and stuff like that, I wouldn't know. That'd be something I'd have to look at.
So where your dad is roughly where they're expected to be, because that's generally around what the industry's doing.
Okay.
But at some point, your dad will want you to run the business.
Mm-hmm.
And it's more important than anything else, even though it's great to know about repairing cars, you need to understand how to run a business. And the primary importance of running a business is knowing your financials. So say to your dad, because I bet your dad doesn't know. So ask him, does he know what his operational cost is per month?
Mm-hmm.
So every month, so just in terms of what he has to pay out, how much does it cost?
Yeah.
Ask him, does he know what his break-even rate is for his labour rate? And he might not even know what a break-even rate is. So basically, your break-even rate is your operational cost divided by the amount of total hours that you spend working.
Yeah.
And from that should then tell you your rate per hour. Okay, you're dividing the cost of the business for the amount of hours available, and that'll tell you what your break-even rate is. So anything less than that figure, you're losing money. Anything more than that figure, you should be making money. Now, things you've then got is that the way you get some of these larger body shops working on £20 an hour or £15 an hour, and it seems counterintuitive that you could work for that type of rate, is basically based around efficiency. Whereas if they're paying an operative £15 an hour, as long as they charge more than the operative is making or getting paid, they're making per operative. Say for example, they charge £20 an hour as a retail rate to an insurer. They're paying the labour rate to the lads in the work, 15 quid. If you've got 10 people working for you and they're all earning £5 an extra hour for you, they're making 50 quid an hour, which then counterbalances the other labour rates. So the two things you've got, one's a break-even rate, which is your operational cost of your business. The second most important thing is your recovery rate. So your recovery rate is the actual labour profit you get per hour over all the contracts that you might have if you're a larger repairer. So say, for example, you've got 4 or 5 different contracts. It might be that some have got a good labour rate, some have got a shit labour rate. The recovery rates, everything combined, and what profit it makes per hour.
Right.
So those are the conversations you need to be asking with your dad. Mm-hmm. Your dad will suddenly go like, where's that come from? Because what you basically need to be doing is speaking to the accountant. And if it's something where you're looking at getting into your father's business, you need to understand how it works. And it's not about running a business, is nothing to do with repairing cars. It's all about understanding your financials, understanding your cost base, understanding your profit, expenditure, and also how to manage your costs. So next time you go to an accountant, say, can I come with you? Because I'll have a chat with your accountant. And it's good to understand it, because then that way it helps you move forward within business and in life in general, to work out, thinking like, right, yeah, this is a go and this isn't. And with things like making profit, do you keep the profit? Do you invest it? Do you stick? We made shitloads of profit this year. Do I stick it into a private pension so I know I'm all right for the future? Or, actually I could invest that into further tools and equipment in the workshop, which could allow me to get staff in. The more staff I've got in, I've then got people that I'm paying less money than I earn, that's going to make me more profit. So knowing these financials helps you develop your business. Brilliant. Okay.
Thank you.
Right. Sonny, you've been very, very quiet. It looks like somebody stuffed you and stuck you in a corner. I can't tell if it's you or not. It's only when you smile I can see your teeth.
My question is, I've never used Auditex, for example. I farm it out to
Andy.
Andrew Hill, yeah. He's a great guy. So as far as drafting up an estimate, how long does it actually take on Auditex?
If I walked into your workshop and you had Auditex in your workshop, I could walk around the car and do a rough estimate, go on Auditex and have it done in less than 20 minutes.
Right.
You know, when you mentioned that, I did request an Auditex estimate from a local accident management company. Briefly, I sent them a few photographs of the damage, vehicle details, and as you say, within 20 minutes later, I had the estimate in my email inbox.
So do you deal with crash in Northern Ireland by any chance?
I do indeed, yeah. It was Jerry Quinn.
Okay. So I work with them and consult to them as well. So yeah, if the last training session that I did around the main things on insurance, they were on it. So I trained all their engineers. So yeah, did you speak to Jerry?
My girlfriend actually works for them now too. She's a trainee claims handler.
I think she might have been on the training actually.
Cassandra, was it? No.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah. Ask her, did she have any training off Motorclaimguru? Because I think it was her.
I must ask her. Small world. I have a question slightly off topic from estimating.
Yeah, okay.
Because I'm a small body shop, not approved by obviously any insurance companies, not name any, but what in general does the smaller guys do, or what do any of you guys do with the likes of a job that comes through and the customer gets scared off because they're told that their excess is going to be double unless they use the approved repair? Do you generally avoid the repair then and send it off and let them deal with it, or fight your case and try and get the job?
They'll go on their own accord. Nobody wants to pay a double excess, and you can fight forever to keep them, but the customers are so fickle, it's not worth the time and effort. Let them go. It's when they come back with a terrible repair, you point at it and laugh.
Unfortunately, with some loyal customers, like, they don't like you laughing at the poor job, obviously, and then you deal with them and tell them, here's what's wrong with your job. You need to go back to them and tell them this, that, and the other. But is there an easier way around of actually trying to keep that job without the customer having to pay double the excess? Tim.
Okay.
You need to speak to Tim.
I quite handily have a resource that both of you, I'm assuming, haven't read or seen on how to overcome increased excesses by insurance companies.
I glanced it.
Oh, you see. So how many jobs have you just given away with your profit there where you glanced at it but you've not used it, and you're going like it's too hard work to bother fighting for it, and they're quite fickle with your own words then. Whereas that could have been £1,000 profit in your back pocket.
If you haven't got a customer 100% on your side, if they're like a jury, if there's any type of doubt, don't bother. They'll be a pain in the arse until the day you die. Let them do what they do. And yeah, there's always other jobs. You know, instead, the customers drove me mental. And you engineers, you all say the worst thing in this trade are the customers. Yeah.
But what you do is, but the thing is, it's better to have more information than less. And it's better to inform the customer as to what's going to happen before it happens. It's better to persuade the customer to be on side rather than not be on side. Because then the fickle customers, when you start educating them to say, it's like you've gone out and bought a product but you're only getting half of it. Okay, shots. Okay, is it where? It's like paying for half a service, and that's the way you put it across to a customer to go, so do you know when you pay for your policy, well, you're only really getting half of it, aren't you? Because you're not getting what you want. If you don't want to get what you're entitled to, if you don't want to get the service you've paid for, yeah, crack on, it's all right. You go away and use it for repairer. because you're not getting what you paid for. You're being robbed by your insurance company, but I'm not bothered. But here's a document to help you overcome your excess. But just, you know, so now you know you don't have to pay this additional excess, or you can probably get it back. But if you still want to use that repairer, you crack on, you'll be all right. So you flick it around the other way around. So if they are a pain in the ass and you don't want to work with them, then they'll fuck off on their own, they've gone. Whereas all of a sudden, if you've educated them, they'll come back to you. So never, ever, ever, ever let a customer go, ever. Because if you can make profit out of it, make profit out of it. If you can't make profit out of it, can you spend weeks because of whinging and complaining and all the rest of it, then let them go. So what's important is never, ever let a customer go. Only let the customers go that don't earn profit. You can make profit out of it, even the ones that are paid in the arse. If it makes you profit, it makes you profit. And I've got a customer that I was telling Mark before, he's not a pain in the arse, but I've been dealing with this case is in court next week. So next Thursday, Friday, I'm in court. And because there was a push on this specific case, my intention was not to work through Christmas in any way whatsoever. And the solicitors were on saying, we need this, we need that. And honestly, God, it was like a bad fart. I just couldn't get rid of it. We kept going back and back and back. And I'm like, oh, for God's sake, it's doing me head in. I'm still charging them shitloads of money. And it's like, so you can have these things that can be an inconvenience in your life. It can be hard work and things like that. Ultimately, though, if it earns you profit, suck it up. Because all their whinging and grief and all the rest of it's giving you a holiday or a car or a house or a pension. Never, ever let them go. Because the thing is, they might then go, do you know what? That guy over there was absolutely excellent. My original intention was I couldn't be arsed with all this because it's hard work dealing with insurance companies and I've got this increased excess and I've got this and I've done that. This guy in this body shop over here was absolutely fantastic. He taught me all the way through it. He explained what was going to go on. He gave me this document on overall to increased excesses. He also told me if I had to pay it and I couldn't get it back, he put me in contact with Motorclaimguru, who would help me get it back for free. So either way, it's a no-brainer. Meanwhile, I'm dealing with a business that cares about me as a person. So it's not about me repairing a car. The thing you've all got to realise is that none of you repair cars for a business. All of you sell peace of mind to your customer. Never think about it in any other way than that. No matter whether you're doing what I do, whether you're in a restaurant, you're in a pub, you're buying a suit, you're advising. What you do is you provide peace of mind to somebody. And if you can provide peace of mind off it to somebody, they'll come back and buy again. As simple as that. Don't let your customers get away.
I'm retired. I'm semi-retired. Well, I had 20 years of this, and it got to me in the end, and that's why I retired.
Gents, I'm going to have to go, gents. I've got something just come through. Thanks very much for your time, everybody.
Yeah, you too as well. So I'm pretty much going to do the same thing as well, wind things up.
All right.
You're still free to ask for other questions as well, anybody.
Good night, fellas.
See you, Mark. Give you a shout tomorrow or something.
Take care.
So,
can you put that document back up again?
Which one?
The one about doubling the excess.
Yeah, just give me 2 seconds. I'll stick it on here if you want. Hang on.
Is it not in the files section?
Yeah, it's in the file section as well, but I can stick it on here for you.
Yeah, have a look in the file section, Rob, when you go into the refinishing crew.
File section, right? Okay, I've never seen that.
Have a look. It's fantastic. It's amazing.
I'm right, sorry.
It's a wealth of. It's like a.
I think I've uploaded something like 30 documents on it.
Yeah. If you want a PPS adapter guide, it's all on there. There's everything on there.
Yeah, Tim, can I ask that one of Sonny's then? He lost the job, but he got loads of costs, for it. But is it true that he could get black marked from an insurance company because of that? So if there was a chance a customer wanted to use him, say it was Hastings, for example's sake.
Now.
Sorry?
It's like wives' tales now, really. Don't really happen.
that doesn't happen. He wouldn't have got blacklisted for doing that.
No.
No.
It's like saying, I piss you off with your blacklist me just because it's you and me between each other, but you're in part of a big organisation. Well, to take the time for me to complain to a team leader to go, Sonny's a wanker, don't want to deal with him. Well, what's he done? He's a pain in the ass.
Yeah, but if it's costed an insurance company 1,200 quid for nothing to move a job, I'm naturally suspicious. You know?
So, how much does an insurance company turn over a year?
Oh, bloody hell. $1 billion?
What percentage of that 1,120 quid charges comes in with their operational cost for a year? 0.001%. Wouldn't even bat an eyelid. If you did it on every single job, and the thing is, they can't. It's not even then about being blacklisted. Really, they can't even get out of it. You'd have to piss off every single engineer in the country to do it. And then what you've also then got is that they have to have engineers, and they don't. So for the likes of when I worked at Direct Line, at one point they had 60 odd engineers, and this is like internal and external. Then it dropped to 50. They've got 12, I think, now nationally. So they outsource it all. Aviva, they had 40 odd engineers. They've got probably 14 now. They outsource it all. They stick most of it through Vision. You look at AXA, they subcontract all their engineering. So you're not going to piss an engineer off. They won't pass it back. He can't be asked. It takes too much time and effort to report it. So it's like it is quite literally an old wives' tale now about being blacklisted, because they don't. The only ones that I know who do is a couple of body shops that I know. One's called Exxon Coach Works in London, and the guy who runs it is called Frixos, and they're a Greek family. And I'll see if we can get him on here. They're absolutely hilarious. He despises insurance companies with a passion. And he's had my training in the past on different stuff, and he literally he's blacklisted from every single insurance company. All of them.
A hero.
Yeah. So literally every single insurance company will not deal with him. They won't authorise jobs with him.
Never.
And yet he's probably one of the most successful repairers in London. And for where he is, I can't remember his address now, he's smack bang in the centre of London. And so if you think about the rates, the business rates for being smacking, and quite literally is smacking the London, it's not on the outskirts, it's bang in the middle of it. So he charges his labour rate something like £125 an hour. And you've got the likes of all these insurance companies not wanting to pay him 40, 35. So they're saying we're not paying that. Well, we can get it done for less. And he went, yeah, I can get it done for less. If I moved up north, I could charge you £40 an hour, but I'm not. I'm in the centre of London. Yeah, but we can get it repaired for less. Yeah, but the place where you can get it repaired for less, the customer doesn't live there. The customer lives in London. So if you want to help this customer move house or somewhere where your body shop is, where you can get it done for cheaper, you crack on and do it, because otherwise it ain't getting moved. So meanwhile, and then he gets into stuff that I teach in terms of having contracts. So the contract they use is my contract, and what they do is they have the customer engage in a contract where they authorise them to do the repairs of the vehicle. So they then say, you know, it is necessary. This customer wanted to use us because we're a VW approved agent and they've got a VW and it's being repaired here. And so if you want to move it, you can, but you can do everything you can to move it. And if you try doing that, it's going to cost you bay blockage, because we've got our engineers booked out on this job to repair it. So it's going to cost you £300 a day just to do that. So you crack it as much as you want, because it ain't going anywhere. And again, you guys haven't been in my training, but the things I say to it is that as much as I like repairing cars and getting paid for it, much prefer getting paid for not repairing cars. So you can either pay me for not repairing it or pay me for repairing it. Which one do you want to do?
Are there more or less engineers throughout the UK than there was 10 or 15 years ago?
Massively less. Massively less.
Yeah.
Like I said, when I worked for Direct Line from 2000 to 2008, there was 64 engineers nationally, and it got cut to 50 odd. They cut down the external field force. They thought they could use audit more and use more internal engineers. Yeah. In 2008, I was part of that redundancy package that happened, and they stripped it down from 51 engineers down to 32. And then after I left, from 2008 to 2012, it dropped down from 32 down to 16. They just chopped them all. Aviva Insurance, again, they had about 80 odd. They're down to about 50 at the moment. AXA, they're still quite heavily engineered. So if there's an insurance company not to try and take the piss with, it's them, because they've got tons of engineers. So, but again, the skill set they have, there's no real insurance company where I've actually found engineers with any real proper skill set as being an engineer, because none of them know how to engineer. So,
the reason I ask that is because when I was 19, coming close to the end of serving my apprenticeship, I was considering going to do the engineering course and further myself and move up the line that way. But the guy I was working for at the time advised me not to. He thought that engineers were a thing of the past and it was all cameras, email, and so on and so forth. So it did at the time put me off, and I thought, well, stick at the tools, open my own shop further down the line at some stage and keep moving up the ladder that way. But recently now, in the past 6 months, maybe a year, I've thought about going back down the line, maybe closing the shop and maybe heading towards the engineering way again.
Now, it depends on what you define as being an engineer. Simple as that. So going back to what I said through the session, you'll note that I said that I don't inspect accident damaged vehicles. I don't have estimating tools, and I don't use Escribe and all the rest of it. So the type of engineering that I do, in my eyes, is what I call proper engineering. So the engineering I do is forensic engineering. So I'll look at what causes faults on things. So within paint defects, whether it's through mechanical defects, sale of goods act, stuff like that. Now, if you act as an engineer and you're doing stuff where you're assessing crash damaged vehicles, you'll probably end up working for insurance companies, and the insurance companies only want to pay. Well, the ABI GTA agreement, which is what they all work on, advises that they'll contribute £50 towards an assessment, and it's gone up slightly to like 65 quid. So they don't want to spend more than that most of the times. In general, they're 100 quid an assessment. So you could do 10 assessments a day, but it's a lot of driving around to do 10 of them, especially if you're on Ireland. It's driving around like a lunatic.
You would never get 10 done in Ireland in a day.
I know you wouldn't. Rob has personal experience in my inspections, haven't you, Rob? So you can unmute yourself. Have you read, actually, just unmute yourself. So have you now read the report I've done?
I have, yeah, and there's a couple of little tweaks need to be made, but other than that, it's marvellous. Did
it make you laugh reading it?
Yeah. I can tell you're not a painter, Sonny will laugh at that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's very good.
But you see, the thing is, there's times then when you need to kind of not put too much information in it.
Well,
on
yeah.
the painting side of it. So
Yeah.
I'm not a painter.
No,
I've got a good knowledge of it, but
there's a couple of inaccuracies in it, that's all.
Yeah, we can amend them anyhow. But
yeah.
You've also got to be careful in terms of prejudice in what you're trying to do as well.
Yeah, that's fine.
Because I don't want to say that you left the vehicle in a workshop where it's had access to moisture and it's that's caused the issue underneath it.
Yeah.
Or something that's defective in the process.
Yeah.
But going back to Ryan, then what you were saying, the engineering side of it, for the type of report that I've done for Rob, so I've not charged him this because I agreed to have it different, but I charged £750 for the one inspection. Now, admittedly, it's took me over a week to write the report for him. So it took a lot of effort, but compared to the other type of engineering you can do, doing that type is more profitable. Because then, should something like that go to court, so I've shown Sonny this when I was on Rob, this case that I'm going to court with next week, I charge £1,000 a day. So within that profit element of being an engineer, it's much better to do proper engineering where you've got stuff going to court where it's now to do with insurance companies. Because the only reason why you don't make profit, irrespective of whether you're engineering or working in a body shop, is because your insurance companies are involved. So just avoid the insurance companies and just get it so other people pay you. So from an engineering point of view, there's potential there. But the flip side of that is that going to what your colleague told you about technologies, there's a company that I work with, which work with artificial intelligence. And I I act as a consultant to them, and I have done for 5 years, and I'm training their artificial intelligence how to be an engineer. So it's basically like it's got my brain in it for the estimating side of it. So that kind of expectancy of job role is diminishing rapidly. So you'll find that things relating to the assessment of damage of vehicles for costings will totally go away from engineering because there won't be a need for it because you've got computers to do it.
Yeah.
Having the technical knowledge around why things fail, or from an insurance company point of view in terms of causation of incidents, or looking at things called locus reports, where you're looking at incident circumstances, doing accident reconstruction, which is other stuff that I do, that potentially has got a lot of money. But again, you can use artificial intelligence to look at road layouts and road maps, and it knows the weight of the vehicles and the speeds of it, and you can work it all out yourself. So even that's a dying trade. So it's.
Do you know if anywhere in Northern Ireland provides courses or training for that?
You can do it through the Institute of Automotive Engineer Assessors. If you speak to, I forgot what his surname is now, Noel. Just give me 2 seconds, hang on.
Yeah.
Noel Mayer is called. I can give you contact details for him. He's the secretary for the Institute of Automotive Engineering Assessors in Ireland. There is a college that you can do it through there. You can also do it online as well through the institute, which you can, if you just Google Institute of Automotive Engineering Assessors in the UK, it'll come up, and you can do distance learning. I'd highly recommend it because it's a great course. I used to be a distance tutor on it as well, so I used to do the assessment markings and do distance learning tutoring on it as well. So I used to do the law side of it. It's a good course.
I'll look into that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, it's welcome. It's certainly just from a knowledge point of view, it's worth it. But so anybody else got any questions? David, have you just started answering on yourself yet? That's a big question for the night. It's great if you can see he's stuck now because his son's not around and he's still looking for the button.
All right, I'm going to have my dinner now. So thanks a lot, Tim. Thanks for your time, and everybody. You know, all the best.
No,
Stay
you're
safe.
welcome. You too as well.
Cheers,
Welcome.
mate.
How are you? All right. You got any questions or anything?
No, I think the biggest thing I learned tonight was I really should specialize in painting mirrors. No, that's about it. Like, I remember chatting to you about doing the engineering thing, the same as Ryan.
Yeah.
Must have been maybe, I don't know, 2 years ago, maybe. But no.
It's kind of gone past the curve now, really. It's if you got into it a while back, because it's about gaining that knowledge. It's an age thing, so without kind of sounding rude, you're probably too old now, really.
Probably, yeah.
And it's
Cool.
because to get proficient, it takes you 20 years, which that might sound kind of odd, but it's so. I mean, I started probably 1990 when I first started doing the engineering side of it. So it took me 30 years to kind of got what I've got now. So if you were just starting, you'd be retiring by the time you start actually making use of what's in your head. So probably not worth it. But there are ways to doing it. I mean, it's certainly beneficial.
Malcolm, did you ever look into it or go anywhere with it then? No?
No, I looked up the website that he was chatting about there and looked at the distance learning thing, but that was as far as it went. It's a time thing, like it's getting the time to sit down and do it.
Yeah.
If you're anything like me, you'll spend most of your time working.
Yeah. Are you a garage owner? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's typical of us in Northern Ireland here. We don't have a quitting time, like.
That's exactly the problem here.
Yeah.
So it is 24/7, yes.
Isn't it funny how you don't have a quitting time, but you've all got a bear time?
Yeah, we can always make room for that.
It's funny the way that works, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you fancy going for a pie, mate? Oh, yeah, go on then.
No paints now lately. No
Yeah,
paints for a good while.
Pre-COVID.
No.
The other thing I think I would like to do, I was looking this up through the week, the Auditing training. I was looking at their online thing. I think it would be good just to understand from your own point of view, even if you get Andrew to do it. I think it'd be nice just to have a better understanding of it myself. Like.
Yeah, I mean, what I can also try and do as well, I've still got some contacts in Auditing. I might be able to get somebody to do a demonstration. I can speak to Andrew, see if he'll let you do it. Like I said, it's been a good 10 years or so since I've used it, and I wasn't that proficient on it, but I could still massacre most people on it because I used to play about on it all the time. So any time when it got quiet, what I used to be doing is I'd set a dummy template off, and then I'd use the likes of Escribe and have it in the background and I'd play about on it. What I tried to do was I tried to break it all the time. How can I break it? What will I do? So I thought, if I can break it, then somebody else can. They can try and make it do different things. Then you start finding glitches in it and all sorts. You can get away with all sorts of little things, like in terms of populating things, putting it through, taking it out and sticking things in the background.
Auditing still have different percentage of pin what you're allowed as well.
Yeah. Well,
and that's something I think if you're an engineer, you'll know. And people.
So the word allowed is something you kind of have to be careful wording. So it's not what you're allowed, it's what you tell the engineer is going to give you.
I've been done with that one.
Yeah. Yes. So yeah, don't tell them what they're going to give you.
Right.
So because you've not been on the training courses I've done, so part of what I do at the end of it is I do a bit of role play on the estimating side of it. And within the estimating side of it, if you want to really twist an engineer's nuggets, just say, well, we're going through all the text through the assessment, and you're fine with the times and you're fine with the methodology of repair. So do you feel that audit text is an accurate data source? You can't answer no, can he? You're using his tool. So if we're using your tool, do you feel it's an accurate data source? Well, yeah, okay. So if it's an accurate data source, then the paint materials index at 100% must also be accurate then, mustn't it?
I've had this argument many times.
Oh, you do? So we can either use your paint index or we don't use it. If we don't use your paint index, we're not using your order text. We'll go off my opinion times. So do you want to use your tool correctly or incorrectly? So just something as simple as that, that's your profit. But what you're then doing is it just means that you're more educated than the engineer. And just little nuggets like that are really important. And knowing how to negotiate with engineers, having more knowledge of the product than they have of it, understanding how it works. So I used to just rip it to pieces and try and make it break. And I'm like, right, I know what I can do with it now, what I can get away with. And yet I never used to create assessments. I'd tear them apart. So the odd occasion I might have to negotiate costs with a repairer, and I'd rip their estimate to pieces and pull things out of it. Because I could tell the ones who were quite cute on it and worked out how to put extra things on it. But if you said what I've just said to you to say to me there, in terms of, Tim, you pulled my estimate to pieces, I'm like, yeah, but that's what it gives you, because all those other things are incorporated into it. And by the way, can you do your paint materials at 70%? I'd expect you to turn around to me and go, but I thought you said you understood how Autotext works, Tim, that you have it's the correct, it produces the correct information. Well, I do. So 100% paint material should be correct then, shouldn't it? If it's your tool, Tim. Why should you reduce it by 30%? It should be right at 100, shouldn't it? Because especially if you're not a network repairer, the only time Autotext should have its paint materials index changed is when it's a network repairer and they've agreed to it in contract. And based on the volume of vehicles they're getting through, that they've actually agreed to reduce the percentage on the paint materials. Aside from that, it should be 100%. Unless it's a pearl, and it should be 130. Or a 3 or 4 stage. That's the only time you should increase it, not decrease it. Right, I'm going to wind up, gents. Sonny, you got anything to ask? Anything to say?
No,
right, that's it.
You guys haven't been on your, your insurance negotiation course. I definitely recommend it. It's like the time when the insurance company wants basic. Well, let's use the word conned my customer into using their body shop instead of me. I think in the past I wouldn't have put up a fight, but as Tim says, knowledge is power, and it does give you the ability to stand up for yourself. And yeah, definitely highly recommend it. Malcolm and Rob are on the course, so they'll probably agree likewise. So it's well worth it. But
the fact that I still keep getting the same faces coming back tells you that the first set of training was all right. They've come back again for a second lot of me.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the subject of audit and estimates, like the tools, I can imagine being very useful for working with insurance companies. Thrown to, like, would I want to prescribe to Escribe, for example, to put together a quote for Deirdre down the road? You know, with the inherent cost of it, I don't know. It's maybe I just need to change my mentality. I don't know.
Well, well, say for example, because you don't do a large volume of jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the jobs that you do, you might be missing off £500 per job. So 500 quid's not an awful lot, is it?
No.
Because it could be different parts of the methodology of doing it. So
that could cover the inflated access.
I'll get around that for you.
I think
so. If you did 4 jobs a year, that'd pay for Escribe. So if you do more than 4 jobs, which you do, so say for example you do 20 jobs,
yeah,
it gives you the potential from those 4 jobs that have actually paid for the tool to make more money. You know, it's got you 500 quid back on the extra 20 jobs you've done.
Yeah, you see it making me money on working with.
Well, that's an extra 10 grand profit.
Yeah.
If you think about it that way. So, and this is what I'm trying to get across the repairers. People say, well, you know, I've just got Deirdre down the road. I don't do that many of them. And it's like, forget that mentality. Does it make you profit? Does it cost your business or make your business profit? So you look at what volume of jobs you're doing and you look at the profit margin you've got in it. And if using that tool can increase your profit margin on a job by 20% on every single job, and it covers the cost of the tool, it pays for itself.
Yeah.
Now, the other side of it is if you're a limited company and your company's buying that tool, then it just means that your company has just earned £2 profit less and pays less tax.
Yeah.
So then it's an overrate. So you actually end up spending less money than you expect on it. So that £2 or £3 tool, if, for example, it means that you're on your corporation tax as a limited company that you're paying less tax overall because it's dropped it down, it then means that that cost of the tool at £3 might only cost you 1,400 quid. Because so, for example, the computer I'm on now is an expensive computer. Me buying this computer at the end of the year, because it reduced my profit levels, it reduced the overall tax I pay completely. So buying my computer saved me £4 How does that work? And it's just, again, that comes back to what I was saying to you before about Oliver, about understanding your financials of your business and speaking to your accountant and working out when's a good time to invest in your company and when's not, and when do you need to buy stuff. Buy stuff that makes your company profit. Buy stuff that makes you more efficient. Subcontract stuff that takes you away from your core goals of what you're doing. So if you're running a business and you're spending more time on the admin than you are repairing cars and that's where your profit is, subcontract it, get somebody in for admin. By the hour, by the week, whatever. Look at where your core profit is. Stuff like that totally transforms your business. Whereas I deal with some companies that complain about the profit in the business and say we don't get paid enough by insurance companies, but they're only 50% efficient.
So Tim, would you potentially use Auditing, so your estimating system, on every single job that comes in the door with insurance work and with your retail jobs? Do you not think that sometimes it'd potentially sort of make a customer looking like, whoa, I'm not coming here for that job?
Okay, so how does the customer know what it costs before they come to you?
Unless they've been to other bodies and got prices, they don't.
Okay, so give you an example. You go to McDonald's, you get a £quarter pounder, you get fries, You've now got beef and chips, haven't you? How much does it cost you? £2, £3?
75.
You go to a nice restaurant and you get a lovely piece of fillet steak, your triple fried, goose fatted chips, a fabulous service, and it costs you £50. You've just bought beef and spuds in both places. One's £3 and one's 50. What's the difference?
Level of service that you get.
I just walked up with a plate and stuck it in front of you. What's different is the customer's expectations.
Quality.
So what you do is, don't be scared. So I did an article on the rush to the bottom and being scared of your competitors down the road. Don't be scared of your competitors down the road. If they're cheaper than you, there's a reason why they're cheaper than you. And it isn't necessarily the quality of the job. It could be that they got lower overheads. You know, they spend less money. They use cheaper products. They shit products. They've done it with a rattle can. So what you got to be careful of is see if I can find it here. If you go on my website, you'll find it, and I did it in Body Shop magazine. It shows you a graph in terms of what people are willing to pay for and what their expectations are. And there was from a marketing point of view, there was a brilliant piece of advertising and marketing by Stella Artois, and it said reassuringly expensive. Now, if you've got a customer coming in and it's expensive, the chances are they'll probably feel it's going to be done right. If it's something dirt cheap, they know what they're buying. They know they're buying shit if it's dirt cheap. If you're somewhere in the middle, then there's a risk there that they don't know what they're buying. They're buying service, quality, panels. You know, it's about setting expectations. Now, if they don't know how much it costs, which they never know what it costs, they all think it costs £50 for a scratch on something. So how much? And you're like, it's only a scratch. Yeah. That scratch cost this amount of money. The reason why it costs this amount of money. So again, what you can also do using something like Auditex is that it distances you away from that conversation with the customer. Because you can go, listen, this isn't me subjectively pulling this figure out of thin air and the ether and saying it's going to cost this. Look, this is a tool that the industry uses and insurance company use, telling us how much to charge you. Look, it's all computerized. It's done it all itself. It's told us what it costs. So you might think it's expensive, but it's what it costs. So like you going somewhere else and buying a product and thinking it's going to cost £2 for a TV, that's expensive. It's what it costs. So it's about educating the consumer, setting their expectations, explaining something in terms of a way that they can understand it. That, you know, so this is how it's broken down. So to do that little scratch there, it's down to the metal. We don't just touch it up for you, because, you know, we can touch it up for you if you want, but it'll look shit. So do you want it to look shit? If you want it to look shit, we'll have to do it.
The bit is them seeing the process of it, really.
Yeah.
On paper.
Yeah, and that's what you explain it to them. So then, if doing an audit assessment earned you profit, it's worth it. If doing an audit assessment doesn't earn you profit, it doesn't. So if it is something, for example, that was less than £500, I wouldn't use it. If it was less than £1,000, I probably still wouldn't use it. If it is something where it is getting to like 2, 3, 4 grand, I'd use it on every job. So what you then do is you filter out what you're using your tools for. Because there's no point using the tools for the sake of using them. You use tools for the, you know, for what the purposes, which with an estimating tool, estimate your profit and do the job right. Whereas if you're doing a fag packet estimate, what I've taught you tonight don't cost you anything. It's just, that's £200, that, love. Why is it £200? Well, 2 hours for that, 5 hours for that, 3 hours for that, a couple of hours, that's only how to do it. Paint materials cost this, there you go. It's cost you nothing. Whereas if I was doing a job on the front end of a car and it's annihilated and it's a 30 grand job, I'd want to be making sure I've got absolutely everything on that, just make sure I've got it right, because if you haven't got it right, and it's not repaired correctly and somebody dies, you're liable for it. So using the right tools for the right jobs. Any other questions? See, it's that dark in Ryan's office. I can even see him smiling.
Me?
See, he can't even tell because he's got no video on.
I'm gonna love using Olivia's, but Tim, if you could you forward me the details for Noel, please? So I can get chatting to him then.
Yeah. So, are you on the Facebook group?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's it. Are you on LinkedIn?
No.
Who what's the bollocking?
I know I missed the LinkedIn meeting you done, so it apparently we don't know what we're missing if we're not on LinkedIn.
You're missing a lot. So I had this conversation with Rob tonight, and I bollocked him as well.
Yeah.
Get on LinkedIn.
I'm just saying that to the boss.
Hello, boss.
Who's also having free training, by the way.
Yeah. Her training is that free that she can't even see her. She's craftily just in the background sniping.
No, she provided me with beer though.
On a Sunday.
And ice cream. So yeah, doing all right.
Perfect. This is there doing that. I had to get me on.
Yeah, well, you locked her out, so that's why.
Yeah, fair point.
There's another thing that, Tim, I often wondered about. Several years ago when I first heard of you, you were doing like an expo in Lisbon.
Yeah, I did that as well. Yeah, Malcolm attended that one.
That night you were talking about you had a case that was coming up. It had went through several courts. I think it was maybe going to a European court or something to do about an insurance company paying out. You were fighting the case for them. Say, for talk's sake, you agreed with the insurance company to insure your car for 10 grand. Then when it was crashed, they decided, no, we're only giving you 6. This was a very big case, I think, back at the time, and you took it on, arguing the point for the person who owned the vehicle, saying, no, argument is you agreed when the policy was taken out to pay, this is what the vehicle's worth, you can't not pay that then. What way did that ever go? Do you remember that? No?
Yeah, they won. Well, I won. They didn't even get to court. They backed out before it got there.
So that leaves the ball in the court then. So if any of us have a car insured valued at 5, 10, 15 grand, automatically insurance should pay out what they agreed to pay to.
Not necessarily, no, because the contract will say you're insured for the market value of the vehicle at the point of loss.
Oh, aye, does that too? Yeah.
So it depends on the contractual wording for it, but it also depends on how you substantiate it as well.
I often wondered what way that case ever went.
But it depends on. I've got a case now. I was telling Rob about this one today. I've got a customer who the policy says that he's insured for 5 grand because that's what the overall schedule of the policy says. So they'll say we pay out either the market value or the maximum of the schedule, whichever one of the two is the highest. But he had an accident that wasn't his fault, so he's got 2 separate sets of entitlement. But one entitlement in contract with his insurance company, but because it wasn't his fault, he has a separate entitlement in law under an aspect of law called tort law. And the contract can't overrule what he's entitled to under the law of tort. So the tort is the highest side of it because it wasn't his fault. So in the open market, his vehicle's worth about 6.5, 7 grand, probably a bit more. But his policy says they're only going to pay him 5. And the insurance company just wouldn't budge. They're going, we're paying 5 grand on it and that's it. So we understand it's not his fault. And we understand he might have got more claiming through them. He's not claiming through them, he's claiming through us, paying him 5 grand. So on that basis, the way you're saying there now, I've been arguing with the insurance company, making him jump through hoops to go, you can't do that because it breaks the regulations. The FCA regulations tell you what you can and can't do. The specific regulation you're breaking is a regulation called ICOBS 8.3.3, which is conflicts of interest. And you're acting in conflict to this consumer's interests. So you can't pay him 5 grand, you're going to pay him 8. So even though you feel it's breaching your own contract, tough. So ultimately, the way it's gone now is because the third parties admitted liability, they've now accepted that they've got to waive their contractual terms and they're now paying what is due. So it's just having an understanding in terms of how things are worded, why it's worded that way, and whether it's actually lawful to apply them or not.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
The training course for tonight. Hopefully we can do this again sometime.
I'll be running a few of them through the year. Like I said, this one's a bit more of a one-off with it being a freebie. But I do quite a few different sessions, and I'm doing a lot on business development this year. So before we wind up, any other questions?
How much do you charge for your services, Tim? Do you know, for private consultation?
Depends on whether you want a blowjob or something else. If you're after a reach around, it's a lot. It depends on what services
why do you think I got a cheap report?
That's why I'm smiling. It depends on what you want. So I provide a broad range of services. So anything from whereas I assist consumers when they have difficulties with insurance companies. I've got a range of different fees for that, depending on what the situation is. So I've got set fees for if it's something to do where someone's not happy with the valuation for the vehicle. So I've got a generic, I've raised my fee from last year to this year. So my generic fee is 500 quid, pretty much for everything to a consumer. If it's something where I'm helping them get an increase in settlement, it's 500 quid plus 10%. So whatever the increase I obtain, it's 10% of that increase on top of the 500 quid. Training sessions I do, depends on the enterprise I'm doing it to. I do a lot of large networks where there might be 9 or 10 body shops in a network. So I charge 1,000 quid for the day for the training session. What I did with Sonny, because we had a good chat and he wants to help the group have access to what I'm training, I gave a preferential discount through Sonny. So whereas it worked out £100 per body shop, basically, rather than 1,000 quid I normally charge, because we can get 5 or 6 years together and I could do it a bit better. So we'll be doing more of those sessions through the year, and depends on anything else that Sonny might want in terms of what training I can provide for it. So if it's a session where it's to his group and his group only, I'd probably be charging £100 per person on a training session. So, but I do a broad range of stuff with different, it's like engineering fees. It can be, if I'm doing a report, it can be like 750 quid for a fully forensic one. It's a bit more in depth. So the report I've done for Rob, tell me how many pages, Rob?
45. And there's only 3 errors. Yeah, 45 pages, 1 million pictures. Lots of
things like that. Whereas if you compare that to a normal engineer, they'll get virtually no pictures and 2 pages.
Yeah.
So if you're in a situation whereas either if you have a consumer with a complaint against an insurance company's approved repairer, for example, and they want you to do the rectification cost, then having a heavily evidence-based report that shows the repairs are defective greatly increases the chance of you getting the job as a rectification job and getting paid more money for it. Because the difference between a rectification job and the insurance job is that the rectification job gets it at retail rates. So rather than it being an insurance company paying £30 an hour, you can charge 65 quid an hour. I tried to do that with Sonny on another job. Yeah. But it got that bad with the job that I was trying to give Sonny, the insurance company bought the car off the customer. Just because I forced them to do it. There we go. So on that note, I'm going to love you and leave you all, because I've not seen my missus all day. So I'm going to say hello to her. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, cheers. Thank you.
No, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Good night all. See you all later.
See you later.